Good afternoon and welcome to this live broadcast of the Senate this afternoon sitting on the 24th day of July, the year 2024. The Senate sitting is taking place at the Senate chambers at Parliament buildings in Nairobi, and this is a live broadcast that is streaming from the Parliament buildings, a broadcast that is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. A warm welcome to you to these live proceedings of the Senate afternoon sitting. In the order of business for the members of the Senate this afternoon, they will be considering a number of bills. These are bills that debate was already done extensively and exhaustively on the floor of the House. That means these are bills that are at their second reading stage. The debate on them already took place on the floor of the House, and these are bills that the business that will be transacted on them this afternoon is that members will be going into division on these bills for them to proceed to the next stage. They will be voting on whether the bills be read a second time. Some of the bills include the Houses of Parliament Bicameral Relations Bill. This is a bill that is originating from the National Assembly, Bill number 44 of 2023, and co-sponsored by the Senate Majority Leader, Honorable Aaron Cheruiyot. Its debate was interrupted on the Tuesday of 28th of May, the year 2024. Remember, this is a bill that seeks to provide a framework for determining the nature of a bill, defining the bills that do not require a joint resolution by the speakers under Article 103, Subarticle 110, Subarticle 3 of the Constitution, define the bills that are considered only by the National Assembly, as well as define bills that are not concerning county governments and define bills concerning county governments. If you can recall, a debate on this bill was concluded, and this afternoon the bill is set to be, or rather debate is set to resume, but the business that will be transacted on this particular bill will be division. Also, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, a bill that is originating from the Senate, Bill number 40 of 2023, by the Honorable nominated Senator Hamida Ali Kibwana, is also one of the bills that this afternoon will be going into division. This is a bill that seeks to amend the Public Finance Management Act, number 18 of 2012, to require county governments to develop and implement a county revenue collection system. This will boost revenue collection by the county governments and ensure counties realize their revenue targets. Further, the bill proposes to amend the Public Finance Management Act to provide for the process of funding for functions that have been transferred from one level of government to another under Article 187 of the Constitution. Also, debate on this bill, as indicated earlier, was concluded, and this afternoon the members will be going into division. Remember, all these bills that are slated or scheduled for division this afternoon will be subject to the House quorum, if there is enough quorum for the members to be able to proceed for this stage of a division on these bills. The motion on the report of the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024 by the Chairperson Select Committee on Delegated Legislation is also part of the business that will be considered. Also, there will be division on this particular motion. It's a debate that was interrupted on the Wednesday of 10th of July, the year 2024. And on this matter, remember the Senate had resolved, or the committee had resolved, to annul these particular regulations owing to the fact that, or rather raising question on the public participation. That is the Speaker of this Senate, Honorable Amasonje Fakingi, making his way into the chambers. He will be presiding over this afternoon sitting. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Mwenyezi Mungu, twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Tukuomba utuajalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, do we have quorum? Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Well, going by the Speaker's directive that the quorum bell be rung, it's a clear indication that the House does not quorate, and that is a bell that, of course, sends the alert to the members of the Senate who may be within the precincts of Parliament but yet to make their way to the chambers to be able to do just that, for the House to achieve the required number of senators for the commencement of a sitting. That is at least 15 members should be inside the chambers for the House to commence its business. The prayer has been said and the chair has been taken, but the number of members seated inside the chambers, as you can see, they do not quorate to the required number. So that would, pursuant to the House Standing Order number 39 and 40, call for the quorum bell. Until that quorum is achieved, then the House can commence its business as indicated in the order of business for this afternoon sitting. There are bills that are also said to be they are also set to be considered at the committee of the whole House stage this afternoon. The gambling of the members currently inside the chambers, that is the minority leader of the Senate, who's also the Senator for Kilifi County, Honorable Stewart Mazayo, who has just made his way into the chambers. More members are expected to do that, and once the House arrives at the quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. My name is Kamche Menza. Good afternoon.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
The Honorable Senator Kio Omtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to read a petition to the Senate concerning the compensation benefits of police officers injured in the line of duty. We, the undersigned citizens, Kenya, and affected police officers serving in the National Police Service Commission, draw the attention of the Senate to the following. 1. That the Work Injury Benefit Act, in brackets WIBA, provides for compensation of an employee by the employer in cases where the employee is involved in an accident or dies while in the line of duty. 2. That police officers, just like any other civil servants, are also beneficiaries of this provision of the law. 3. That the National Police Service Commission, in brackets NPSC, contracted the National Health Insurance Fund, in brackets NHIF, to insure all police officers between the years 2021 and 2022. 4. That once a police officer reports an injury incident to the station commander, due assessment is undertaken by both a personal doctor as well as doctors at the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services, in brackets DOSHS brackets. 5. That after assessment of the injury, the director of WIBA at DOSHS generates a demand for payment based on what the officer is awarded by the DOSHS doctors. 6. That a demand from WIBA 4 is sent to the police headquarters for the injured police officer to sign if he or she agrees with the benefits awarded. The signed WIBA 4 demand form is then referred to the National Health Insurance Fund, which provides the WIBA cover for police officers for payment. 7. That payment ought to be done within 90 days from the date the WIBA 4 demand form is generated and submitted for processing. 8. That since the year 2021, more than 400 injured police officers have not been paid their injury benefits after being assessed and awarded benefits in accordance with the procedure set above. 9. That some police officers have been totally incapacitated due to injuries sustained in the line of duty. 10. That some of these officers lost their arms and legs, which negatively impacted their lives and the lives of their families and dependents. 11. That added to the low pay, poor housing, erratic career progression, and hostile public attitudes and other occupational hazards that the police officers endure daily, the disregard of the injuries sustained in the line of duty makes it unbearable. 12. That both the National Police Service Commission and the National Hospital Insurance Fund have not explained why no officer out of the more than 400 victims has ever been compensated. 13. That to make matters worse, some injured police officers cannot access their files. 14. That cases of corruption have been cited, including where some officers were asked to be reassessed and others were asked to part with a percentage of their benefits before they could be paid. 15, that the injured officers have tried and failed to get the National Police Service Commission, the WIBA Director, the DOSHS, and the NHIF CEO to intervene for the payments to be made. 16, that Mr. Dunston Kinyanjui, who was appointed as a representative of the police officers, has not given any coherent reasons why the benefits have not been paid. 17, that none of the issues raised herein are pending before any court of law or any other legal entity. Wherefore, your humble petitioners pray that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya intervenes with a view to 1. Ensure that all the injured police officers are given fair treatment in terms of benefits payment, just like all other civil servants. 2. Recommends that the WIBA and the DOSHS produce the list of all the injured police officers since the year 2021, detailing the name of each officer, nature of injury, time of injury, and the amount of compensation awarded. 3. Recommends that the National Health Insurance Fund compensates the affected officers immediately. And your petitioners will ever pray. Presented to the Senate by Andrew Omtato Koiti, MP, Senator from Busia County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, I commit the petition to the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare for consideration. Now, in terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the date of reading this prayer, which is today, to table its report in the Senate for consideration. The Senate shall thereafter consider the report of the committee. I thank you. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
Senator Faki, you're out of order. Why are you seeking a point of order when there's no senator on their feet? And I don't think he's... Proceed by calling the next order, Clerk. The Majority Leader, you may proceed to lay the papers.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 24th of July, 2024. This is the Office of the Controller of Budget, Annual Report and Financial Statements for the financial year 2022-2023. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statements pursuant to Standing Order 53-1. Senator Kavindu. That statement is dropped. Senator David Wakoli. Senator Professor Tom Ojanda, you have 4 statements. You may read all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 4 statements this afternoon. The first statement is on the employment of persons above the mandatory age, retirement age in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the employment of persons above the mandatory retirement age in Kisumu County. The Constitution of Kenya and the County Governments Act 2012 establishes the various apparatus and modalities a county must consider in employing persons in various positions. Further, according to the policy of the national government, except for a few exemptions such as the judiciary, the retirement age for categories of various civil servants was revised in 2009 and set at 60 years and 65 for those for different categories. The Public Service Commission also provides that once a public officer has attained the retirement age, the officer shall retire from the service with effect from the date of attaining the age. Despite all these provisions, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Kisumu County Government has proceeded to employ in its ranks persons who are above the mandatory age in contravention of the law. In the statement, the county should, 1, state the county's policy on employing retirees, disclosing the number of individuals employed under this category, providing details of their contracts, job descriptions, and remuneration. 2, state the justification for hiring retirees over potentially more resourceful, younger candidates and Gen Zs, the process used for selecting the retirees, and the measures put in place to ensure that employing retirees does not hinder career advancement for younger employees or hinder effectiveness and impact of service delivery on organization performance. And lastly, table a report assessing the retirees' skills, experience, and suitability for various positions. Mr. Speaker, my second statement is on the level of disaster preparedness in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Order 53 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations concerning the level of disaster preparedness in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, Kisumu County has been severely affected by floods, impacting on over 5,000 residents in the most recent incident. The county government should prioritize on disaster preparedness in its plans to safeguard the lives and property of the citizens. In the statement, the committee should, Mr. Speaker, 1, provide an overview of disaster preparedness mechanisms in Kisumu County, including plans, policies, resources, verifying whether at least 2% of the budget is allocated to the county emergency fund as per the PFM, and explain the utilization of funds from the year 2017 to date. 2, assess the existence and effectiveness of an early warning system for floods and landslides in Kisumu, stating whether flood mitigation measures such as drainage systems, flood barriers, and dike construction have been implemented in flood-prone areas, and providing a breakdown of the costs incurred. 3, describe how the county government coordinates with the national government, NGOs, and CBOs to enhance disaster preparedness and response efforts. 4th, evaluate the technical capacity and availability of trained personnel, equipment, and emergency shelters for flood-related incidents, and clarify whether there are measures in place to address the needs of vulnerable populations such as children, elderly persons, and persons with disabilities. Explain how the county government coordinates with the national government and other stakeholders to enhance preparedness. State the capacity of the county emergency response, including the availability of trained personnel and rescue teams and emergency shelters, if any, to respond to flood-related incidents. 7, state whether there are deliberate measures in place to address the needs of vulnerable populations, and how the county intends to integrate risk reduction and resilience building measures into CIDP processes, particularly in areas prone to floods. And lastly, state how often the disaster preparedness are reviewed and updated to reflect the changing environmental regime caused by climate change. Mr. Speaker, my third statement is on the state of stadia facilities in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the state of stadia facilities in Kisumu County. Article 186(1) of the Constitution of Kenya, read together with Article 4H of the Part 2 of the 4th Schedule of the Constitution, devolves sports activities and construction and maintenance of facilities, including stadia, to the county governments. Mr. Speaker, the Sports Act 2013 further provides that county government shall establish, manage, and develop sports facilities within the county. In the statement, the committee should report the current state of stadia and sports facilities in Kisumu County and state whether there are plans to upgrade the existing stadia facilities to meet national and international standards, and if any, state the specific steps taken. 2, state whether there are ongoing maintenance and rehabilitation projects aimed at improving infrastructure of existing stadia, and provide details of the scope and progress of these projects and any budgetary allocations, projected timelines, completion, and tenders. State the funds allocated to the county budget for maintenance and improvement of stadia in Kisumu County for the financial years 2013 to date. Provide details of any plans underway to construct new stadia. And lastly, outline the measures in place to ensure transparency and accountability in the utilization of resources. Mr. Speaker, lastly, my last statement, and Mr. Speaker, this comes against the background that on the health facilities, this is on the upgrade of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital to a level 6 facility. And this is important, Mr. Speaker, sir, given that now we are in government. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the need to upgrade Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu County to a level 6 teaching and referral hospital. Mr. Speaker, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga is currently classified as a level 5 hospital and is under the stewardship of the county government of Kisumu, providing vital medical and health services to residents across more than 10 counties. It is therefore time, Mr. Speaker, that this facility be upgraded. The facility serves a combined population exceeding 10 million people. In the statement, the committee should, Mr. Speaker, initiate the necessary measures and steps needed to upgrade JORTH from a level 5 to a level 6 teaching and referral hospital, and further, the hospital be accorded access to budgetary resources and medical equipment and human resources attached to that status. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, recommend policy and legal framework needed to facilitate and realize the upgrade of JORTH to a level 6 facility. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I note, now ODM is in government. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Hamida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My statement is on recent attacks on journalists covering the Occupy protests by Gen Z in Kenya by police officers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on the recent attacks on journalists covering the Occupy protests organized by Gen Z in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should provide detailed accounts of the reported attacks on journalists, including any physical assaults, verbal threats, arrests and detention, destruction and equipment and other forms of intimidation that have taken place during the protests, including also alleged attempts to muzzle media houses from covering the protests. Number 2, conduct an investigation into the role of police service in these attacks, including any evidence of excessive use of force or failure to protect journalists in the line of duty. Number 3, highlight steps that the National Police Service has taken to ensure the safety and protection of journalists covering protests and other public events in the future. And number 4, state the actions being taken to hold the perpetrators accountable for their actions against journalists, including the legal proceedings or disciplinary measures. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wakoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. A request for statement on the state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, report on the current state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County, providing a detailed inventory of all county government assets at the slaughterhouse. 2, provide details on the revenue from the slaughterhouse that has accrued to the county government since its operationalization, as well as the average number of poultry slaughtered per day. 3, evaluate the socioeconomic impact of the slaughterhouse on the residents of Bungoma County, stating the number of residents employed as well as the number of farmers that supply poultry to the slaughterhouse. 4, clarify whether the leasing process of the slaughterhouse was competitive, and if not, provide a justification for the same. And 5, provide details on the lease of the slaughterhouse, to include the details on the company that was awarded the lease, the cost of lease, the handing over process, as well as the memorandum of understanding signed between the county government and the said company. Honorable Speaker, my next statement on supplementary budget of over 148 million approved by the County Assembly of Bungoma County towards the hosting of the 2024 Madaraka Day celebrations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance Budget regarding the supplementary budget of over 148 million approved by the County Assembly of Bungoma County for the financial year 2023-2024 that allocated funds towards hosting of the 2024 Madaraka Day celebration in Bungoma County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the total amount budgeted and allocated for the 2024 Madaraka Day celebrations held on 1st June 2024 in Bungoma County, providing a breakdown of contributions from the national and county governments towards facilitating the event. 2, explain why Bungoma County Assembly approved a supplementary budget of over 148 million to fund a national government event and provide a breakdown of how these funds were utilized. And 3, explain how procurement towards facilitating the event was conducted, stating the procurement method used, and further provide details of the companies that were awarded tenders, the tender sum of each tender awarded, as well as the bill of quantities for works procured for the national event. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Kavindo, your statement has been brought back after having explained yourself. Proceed to read your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My statement is on cases of reported bodies dumped and retrieved from Quarry area, Embakasi South constituency of Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding cases of reported bodies dumped and retrieved in Quarry area in Embakasi South constituency in Nairobi County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, conduct investigations into the cause of the deaths of the 42 women whose bodies were dumped and retrieved in the Quarry area, Nairobi South constituency, in Nairobi County. 2, provide information in the identities and origins of the 42 women, including whether their families had reported them missing. 3, explain why the alleged serial killers' heinous acts went unnoticed, and why the identity remains unknown to the residents of the neighboring of the Quarry area, despite the murders being committed from the year 2022 to date. 4, clarify why the government was not aware of the matter until it was reported in the media. Provide an update on the status of the investigations and outline how the families of the victims will obtain justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order. Now, honorable senators, allow me to rearrange today's order paper, of course, for the convenience of the House, pursuant to Standing Order 45-2. We move to prosecute order number 16, and thereafter we will move to order number 27. Once we are done with those two orders, and still there'll be time, we will prosecute any other order that will be available at that time. Clerk, proceed to call that order.
Order number 16, motion. Report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move order number 16, being the motion on the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I proceed, I wish to seek for clarification from the chair. Mr. Speaker, in our report which we laid earlier, yesterday, we indicated the three nominees, Madam Lynette Washiali Muganda as number 1 in the score, followed by Mohammed Aden Abdi as number 2 by score. Before coming to this conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, we had been confronted in the committee with a challenge. One of the candidates was knocked off, and the reason for being knocked off is not because he didn't qualify. Mr. Speaker, he was actually candidate number 1. However, we were forced to knock him off because when due diligence was done on his testimonials, a letter came from the University of Nairobi stating that the degree which he had uttered to the committee was not genuine. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, we dropped the name of that candidate and proceeded and formed the committee, the report on which we were agreed in the majority. Mr. Speaker, minutes before I prepared to move the motion, we have received yet another report from the Office of the Clerk, marked to us. And I have found, Mr. Speaker, that it is a letter from the University of Nairobi, which is now rescinding its earlier letter to the committee, and now confirming that the degree certificate from the University of Nairobi is indeed genuine. Mr. Speaker, for this reason, I would like you to guide us, because if then the certificate is genuine, it means we have no grounds to knock that candidate from the list, and therefore his name should be before the House. So I appeal to you, Chair, you give us guidance, because the matter has since left the committee. There's nothing the committee can do. The matter is now in plenary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni, you may proceed to table that later before I give guidance on the same.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I table the letter from the University of Nairobi, being a letter in reference to Abdurrahman Hassan and signed by Mr. Emmanuel Mumba, Registrar of Academics, University of Nairobi. A copy of the letter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mngatana, what is your intervention?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you consider giving us direction on this matter, I feel that an injustice has been carried out on a person who qualified and was left out because of a mistake that was caused by an institution. Now, logically, the institution has tried to restitute by correcting the injustice that was visited upon that applicant, whom I do not know because even the name has not been given to us. But, Mr. Speaker, I would propose that you consider allowing the very Honorable Senator Khalwale to move the motion that is on the order paper in an amended form so that that other name can be included, Mr. Speaker. And then the three names can be forwarded if the Senate approves the motion. The three names can be forwarded for consideration for appointment by the other authority. I think that would serve the justice so that we don't visit injustice twice by the institution and then another institution to exclude that person. I submit, Mr. Speaker, for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Onyonka Richard.
Mr. Speaker, just as much as I support what Honorable Mungatana has said, the only request I wanted to make is your guidance on whether, from what Honorable Khalwale has said, what does that letter actually say? Is the university making the apology that they made an error, or was the document just produced as evidence? Oh, then I understand. Okay.
Senator Enoch Wambua, what's your intervention?
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, where I sit, this is also a very serious issue. Serious because I do understand that the committee had already tabled its report and that the moving of the motion was subsequent to a report, which then, if that letter is admissible, I don't know, I've not seen the letter, then it would follow that the committee made a decision on account of misleading information. The source of the misleading information has attempted to correct that position. But from our traditions, customs and practices, once a committee tables a report, I don't know what avenue is available to reopen the report. The only window that I see myself is in the motion. Senator Mugatana is proposing something, I don't know how possible that is in the immediate, that Senator Khalwale can move the motion in an amended version. My understanding of the practices is that decision of amending the motion cannot be asked to make on the floor. It has to be a committee decision with guidance from the Speaker. The Speaker, I am not helping the situation in any way. I'm just also getting confused in it. But I think the Speaker, then you are reasoned ruling on this one. Perhaps you give us a date that you're going to rule on this after even determining the authenticity of the letter that has come. Then you can do a reasoned ruling and guide the House on how to process this matter. The Speaker, I submit.
Yes, Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also concur with Senator Wambua. All our universities, including University of Nairobi, where I did my master's, I believe the letter can only be admissible if it is accompanied by the graduation booklet from the university. Otherwise, the letter can be done by anybody to purport that it's coming from the university. The booklet with the name of this particular candidate should accompany the letter, Honorable Speaker.
Now, Honorable Senators, I will give my ruling on this letter on Thursday next week. So whether the procedure to adopt will depend very much on the ruling that I'll be delivering on Tuesday next week. Let's rest the matter at that. We now move to Order 27. Order 27.
Order number 27, the Fire and Rescue Services Professionals Bill, Senate Bills number 55 or 2023. Second reading.
Senator Mohammed Abbas Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill number 55, 2023, be read the second time. Mr. Speaker, sir, the principal objective of the bill is to ensure the delivery of high-quality, professional, and standardized fire and rescue services across all counties through the regulation of fire and rescue services professional in Kenya. This is geared towards reducing public safety, protecting lives and property. Honorable Speaker, the importance of this fire and rescue service bill cannot be overstated. These men and women risk their lives every day to protect our lives and minimize the devastation impact of fire, accidents, and emergencies. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, this country has faced many incidences of fire. A few months ago, we had the worst fire incident that was witnessed in Kenya, the most tragic fire disasters occasioned by a gas explosion in Mpakasi. Had we had enough trainings, people trained, and regulation in place, I think we'll have minimized that disaster. This disaster is actually important, of vital importance of well-functioning fire and rescue services sector. If there were any, then things will have been minimized. This calls to action for us legislators to put in place the necessary framework and resources to ensure that all incidences can be prevented and that they do not occur or they can be minimized, the risks can be minimized fully. Honorable Speaker, having said that, as you are aware, in most instances, the fire and emergency issues, the disaster issues is actually devolved. But however, facilities are actually in poor state in most of the counties. Emergency preparedness is not there. And as a result, even today, as you look around here, this is like Parliament here. God forbid, if there will be any fire, you can see no institution, no vehicles or no facilities that are available within reach of this institution. Because in the past, we used to have in such places fire vehicles stationed next to the institution. We used to have, rescue services. We used to have some small tanks for fire extinguishers in every place. But of course, as you work even the big building there, you will hardly see anything to do with the fire services by providing, anything for rescue services or emergency issues. Honorable Speaker, there is no proper trained personnel in this country. We have a small training institute for the Nairobi county, but even that itself is not fully functional. And therefore, I think we with having this kind of bill, we will be able at least to have regulated services and be able to control emergencies on fire. Honorable Speaker, some of the most ugly incidents that took place in this country, beside the one for the Mbakasi one, in 2001, there was a fire outbreak in a certain school in Ukambani called Shengulu Mixed Secondary School, where 60 students lost their lives. Similarly, the fire occurred in Bombululu Girls in Kwale. The 25 students lost their lives. In 2011, massive fire at Makuru, Sanai, caused by oil leakage from a Kenya pipeline, Tanga, resulted in over 100 deaths. In Nakuma downtown in 2009, in Nakuma downtown, there was an uncovered generator that led to fire and loss of 29 lives and destroyed properties worth millions of shillings. In the same year, fuel tanker overturned in a place somewhere in Molo called Sawagan, causing fire that claimed the lives of 113 people, and many people injured, and men lost, and most of the Kenyans today are still living injured, and some of them died. You know, what also happens is that in Kukomba, almost every year, we have fire that destroys a lot of property. But at any one given time, the disasters or any fire outbreak, we have no prepared interventions. Honorable Speaker, the above fire disasters, coupled with the recurring fire incidents in the secondary schools and markets, underscores the urgent need for improved fire safety measures, emergency response plans in Kenya. We, however, can only achieve this as a country with proper trained and regulated fire and rescue services professionals, which is what the bill seeks to provide. Honorable Speaker, the Fire and Rescue Service Bill 2023 establishes a Fire and Rescue Service Board, a body that cooperates, a body that will be charged with overseeing the registration, regulation, and setting of standards for fire and rescue services professionals. The establishment of the board will ensure the highest standards of professional conduct, training, service deliveries in the fire and rescue service sector. The board will be composed of representatives from key stakeholders, including relevant government ministries, the Council of the county governors, representatives from fire and rescue services professionals, associations, and rescue associations. This diverse membership will ensure that boards benefits with broad benefits from a wealthy experience expertise to give at least an expertise and be able to save Kenyans from these disasters. One of the board primary functions will be to develop and enforce a code of conduct for fire, rescue, or service professions. This code will set out clear standards of behavior, ethics, and professionalism that all personnel must adhere to in the course of their duties. It will also provide a framework for the disciplinary action in case where the standards are breached, and ensuring that the integrity of the professionals is maintained and the public can have a full confidence in the service provided. Honorable Speaker, the board will also play a crucial role in advising both the national and county government on matters related to fire prevention and rescue services. This will promote greater coordination, collaboration between different agencies and stakeholders, enabling more effective and more efficient different agencies. Honorable Speaker, you are aware, currently I think there is no place where we can refer our problems. This country has faced, especially when vehicles collide, passengers, especially the passenger vehicles, the buses, many people that perish there. The buses get their insurances. They have been paid by the insurances, but, you know, the passengers that die or injured are never compensated. You see, the institutions like Kenya Power and Lighting There's also a surge always of electricity, of power, and many people lose their properties, and nobody is actually being compensated. Honorable Speaker, the registration process will help to ensure that only qualified and competent individuals and firms are permitted to operate the sector, providing a vital safeguard for public safety. It will also enable the board to maintain a comprehensive database of all registered professionals and firms, facilitating better oversight, monitoring, and enforcement of standards. Honorable Speaker, in addition to the registration, the bill will also set out a robust framework for the training and professional development of fire and rescue service personnel. The board will also be empowered to develop and oversee training programs, curricular standards, and standards ensuring that all personnel have access to high quality, relevance, and up-to-date training opportunities. These will help to build a more skilled, knowledge, and capable workforce, better equipped to respond to disasters of fire. Honorable Speaker, the bill also contains provision of discipline of professional misconduct, malpractice by fire and rescue service professionals. The board will also have the power to receive and investigate complaints against registered professionals and firms and to take appropriate disciplinary action where necessary. This will include the ability to suspend or revoke registration, impose fines, and refer cases to the relevant authorities for criminal prosecution. Honorable Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sir, disciplinary procedures are essential for maintaining public trust and confidence in the fire and rescue service sector. This will help to ensure that professionals and firms are held to the highest standards of conduct and performance, and that all breaches of these standards are dealt with swiftly and effectively. Honorable Speaker, the benefit of this bill extends far beyond the immediate confines of the fire and rescue service sector. By establishing a more professional, accountable, and responsive sector, we will be able to at least create a safer and more resilient and more prosperous society for all. Effective fire prevention, emergency responses, services are essential for protecting lives and property and livelihoods, and for minimizing the social and economic cost of these disasters. Honorable Speaker, a strong and well-regulated fire and rescue service sector is a significant driver of the economy and growth and job creations. As the sector expands professionalism, it will create new opportunities for employment, entrepreneurship, and innovations, contribute to the overall development and prosperity of our nation. Honorable Speaker, I am confident that with the passage of this bill, we will be able to take a major step forward and save more resilient and more prosperous future for this country. By investing in the professionalism and regulation of the fire and rescue service sector, we are investing in the safety and well-being of this nation at large. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, this country actually has no institution that trains people. The fire and rescue services is so much decentralized, and there is no coordination of this very important institution. And therefore, by having this bill passed, we'll be able to have a very robust fire control services and fire interventions that occur in this country, which has caused a lot of problems. You know, fire every time happens, fire outbreaks happen, they burn properties, many people die, and therefore it's my hope, I hope that in the fire bill will be able to give us at least a professional bill that will guide on how to manage the fire. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, I urge all members to join me in supporting the Fire and Rescue Services Profession Bill 55/23 of 2023. Let us also use this opportunity to create a more professional, accountable, and responsive fire and rescue services sector, and to build a safer, more resilient future of all Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to call upon Honorable Senator Seki to second the bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the mover of the bill, Honorable Bas, for coming up with this important bill, Honorable Speaker, on the Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill number 55 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, I want to support this bill because it recognizes the issue where we have boards nationally and even in counties where we'll have a focus of this disaster recovery, where we'll be able to look and even focus nationally and counties through the boards. This problem that is occurring in our counties. These boards will definitely look at issues of discipline in those who are handling the issues of fire, training by try to focus on issues where the counties and national government, the ministry involved in the national government and counties will be able to budget a sufficient amount or sufficient money to handle the issue of fire, and come up with the policies where at every other time try to amend and come up with proper policies that will help in handling of issues of fire and fire rescues. Honorable Speaker, it is true that we have been having issues and problems in our counties on issues of fire breakdown, and it is something that is there. It is not something that is a history to us, but the way we handle, the way we have been having even recoveries, the way we have been even paying those who have been affected has never been in place. This is a bill that brings in the issues where at least there's some structure in place, putting structures in place to put the country, the counties, on notice on how they'll be handling this disaster. I want to thank the mover for coming up with this bill, Honorable Speaker, because it will help county governments in every financial year. They will come up with plans on how to budget, put some money on their vote heads, so that at least in case there is this kind of disaster, there will be a management on how they will manage this, and even they will recover. People who have been affected will recover their properties. We have seen causes where this fire is coming through schools. We've seen a lot of damages in our schools. We've seen electricity causing a lot of fire in our towns, in our major towns, and even individually in the business, people losing properties, such kind of thing. So I think with this bill, Honorable Speaker, it will help us. It will help the country to manage this disaster. It's also coming in a time where the Committee of National Security is also coming, where I am a member, is coming up with the management of disaster management, a bill on disaster management. This, I think it will go hand in hand together with this bill, and I'm very sure it will be a very important bill to our devolution to county government. So I want to come up with these amendments, and even with these proposals, that I do second, Honorable Speaker, this bill. So thank you very much, and we thank the mover. Thank you very much. Honorable Senators, I'll now proceed to propose the question that the Fire and Rescue Services Professionals Bill, Senate Bills number 55 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable Senators, the floor is now open for debate. Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii
kuunga mkono mswada wa zimamoto na uokoaji wa waathiriwa wa mambo ya moto. Mheshimiwa Spika, majanga ya moto yamekuwa mengi sana katika nchi yetu, na tunaona kwamba kaunti zetu hazijakuwa na mipango mahususi ya kuweza kupambana na majanga haya. Mheshimiwa Spika, tunaona mioto mingi ambayo inatokea, mali na hata maisha hupotea wakati ya majanga kama haya yanapotokea. Kwa hivyo mswada huu, Mheshimiwa Spika, umekuja katika wakati mwafaka kabisa ili kuweza kuweka msingi sheria ambayo itasaidia mambo haya kwa siku za usoni. Tukianza kabisa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia katika kaunti zetu zote, bajeti zao za zimamoto ni ndogo sana, Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati huduma hii inasaidia pakubwa kukitokea dharura, kuokoa maisha na kuokoa mali. Tukiangalia, Mheshimiwa Spika, bajeti zetu zote, si Mombasa, si Nairobi, nafikiri kuna kaunti nyingine hata zimamoto, fire zimamoto hawana. Kwa hivyo sheria hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, itatoa nafasi nzuri ya kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya moto yanaangaliwa kwa undani zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna vipengee vingi ambavyo ni vya kutia moyo katika mswada huu, na ningependa maseneta wasome kwa sababu hii inaathiri nchi nzima. Tukiangalia mara nyingi zile sehemu ambazo moto hutokea, hakuna magari ya kutosha ya kuzima moto. Kwa mfano, hapo nyuma kaunti yetu ya Mombasa ilikuwa na gari moja la kuzima moto peke yake. Lakini sasa kumekuwa na maendeleo kidogo, kuna magari zaidi ya 6 na kuna substation pia sehemu ya Likoni, ambapo sasa kukitokea moto Likoni, magari yako kule Likoni. Ukija pia upande wa Kisauni, magari yako Kisauni, Changamwe, magari yako Changamwe. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo ambalo ni la muhimu sana ambalo ni lazima tuliangazie ili tuweke sheria ya msingi ya kuhakikisha kwamba tunapambana na matatizo kama haya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mbali na kuwa na vifaa, vile vile pia ni muhimu ya kuweza kuwa na wafanyaji kazi ambao wanajua kazi yao ya zimamoto. Mheshimiwa Spika, kazi ya zimamoto si kazi ya kawaida ambayo mtu anaweza kufanya. Kwanza lazima mhusika awe na yuko physically fit, anaweza kama ni kupanda ngazi, anaweza kukimbia. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, utapata sehemu nyingi pia hatuna wafanyaji kazi wa kutosha wa kuhudumu katika kitengo hichi. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, mbali na vifaa, tunahitajia pia kutekelezwa kwa mafundisho ya wafanyaji kazi ambao wanazima moto, na pia malipo yao yawe tofauti na wengine, kwa sababu wanafanya kazi ambayo ni ngumu sana na katika mazingira magumu sana, kwa sababu wanaingia sehemu ambayo kuna moto. Saa nyingine pia hata vifaa vya kisawasawa vya kupambana na moto huo hawana. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono mswada huu, na ningeomba maseneta wote waweze kuunga mkono ili tuwe na sheria ya kimsingi ya kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya zimamoto yanahudumiwa kikamilifu yanapotokea. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this Fire and Rescue Services Professionals Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, may I first start by congratulating the Honorable Senator Abbas for the industry and the work that went into putting in this bill together. Mr. Speaker, this bill is relevant, and it also gives us opportunity for us to discuss the status of fire and rescue, not only the professionals, but the status of fire and rescue departments within our counties. Mr. Speaker, I would want to talk about our county, Mr. Speaker. Tana River County, we are not doing well when it comes to the fire and rescue disaster department. In fact, Mr. Speaker, all the vehicles that were procured, which were procured for purposes of dealing with fire disasters, Mr. Speaker, are all stationed at the county headquarters in Hola. Mr. Speaker, Tana River County is one of the largest counties in this country, with over 35,000 square kilometers. And Mr. Speaker, if you station all the fire rescue trucks in the county headquarters, that is in Galole constituency, it is virtually impossible, Mr. Speaker, for those vehicles to respond to emergencies in Bura constituency, to emergencies in Garsen constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, there is also a lack of a proper fire policy. What should people do when this disaster comes knocking? We never pray for this disaster. We never plan for them. Mr. Speaker, when these disasters come knocking, they have devastating effects. Mr. Speaker, I have attended to many situations where you go to console victims of fire, and it is because, Mr. Speaker, the fire services were not able to reach on time. And the people have been left to their own devices, so that neighbors are the ones who now carry the responsibility of trying to save their neighbors. Mr. Speaker, this kind of situation should not be allowed. Why we say this, Mr. Speaker, under Schedule 4 of the Constitution and Section 14 of the Constitution, fire and rescue services are devolved to the counties, Mr. Speaker. They are devolved. So any governor who is elected into office knows that this is one of the things that they must do. But, Mr. Speaker, many governors are not budgeting or looking after this critical department. And it only becomes relevant when you hear people have died or people have been injured. And then we have to go there and give our police. Mr. Speaker, it is time that we focus more on what we can do to help our citizens, to help our counties, and to help those who have voted us into office. And, Mr. Speaker, a lot that goes wrong in this profession is because, as we have seen, this profession is not regulated, and it is not even given the respect it deserves. A lot of people don't even think that this fire department should even exist. And this is the attitude in the counties. Mr. Speaker, it is my prayer that this bill will put a change in this attitude so that our governors can start looking at this as a profession, the same way they look at policemen. In more developed economies, Mr. Speaker, people are proud to be firemen. Someone will tell you, my grandfather was a fireman. My father was a fireman. And I'm also following in the family tradition to be a fireman. Like the way people are proud to have been in the lineage of soldiers, in the lineage of policemen. The same thing for fire people. So, Mr. Speaker, no doubt this bill has come at a good time when people can start to bring to the attention of our counties that we need indeed to do something about our various fire departments. And, Mr. Speaker, The only thing I'd like Senator Abbas to look at, the board that he has created, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the proposed clauses, they have created a cabinet secretary in charge of fire and rescue. And to the best of my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, this cabinet secretary doesn't exist. And Mr. Speaker, also this bill seems to be creating a board. It's a good step, but I think we need to change some of the things. It's creating a board that is putting the permanent secretary, principal secretary, in charge of, responsible for matters of fire and rescue in the board, to be a member of the board. It is also putting the principal secretary for finance in the board, again, Mr. Speaker. It is also putting the principal secretary in the ministry responsible for internal security in the board. And Mr. Speaker, I have said that this is a devolved function. And as a standard procedure, I think we here in the Senate, when we create a law, when we are developing legislation, we must create legislation that is going to help our counties take charge of their destiny. But this one seems to have been, we have surrendered the board's power to the national government. Because if you put the PS for whatever, the PS for whatever, PS for whatever, inside a board, in a board that is supposed to function for the county governments, and then the governors are only having 2 positions to nominate people. Mr. Speaker, I feel that we can restructure this board so that it reflects the fact that fire and rescue is actually a function of the counties. We must create law that is going to help our governors to manage their functions, not to give them excuses so that they say, look, the board is the one, and it is the PSAs of Nairobi who have not assisted us to do the work. There's no legal framework for us to be able to execute our duties. Mr. Speaker, we laud the fact that this board actually has been created, and this board now, through this legislation, will come to existence. But, Mr. Speaker, the board does not seem to have any person or even powers to recognize learning that is acquired learning or experienced learning. Mr. Speaker, I would ask Honorable Abbas to find a way in which they can recognize people who are already practicing this fire and rescue. Because there are some departments, there are people who are already doing this work, but they don't have any serious qualifications. So those who have experience, this particular law should give an opportunity to recognize those as professionals as a beginning. At the same time, it will be important for this law, because it is talking about professionals, to clearly state that for one to be a professional, he must have trained for 6 months, he must have trained for 1 year, he must have trained for 2 years or something, for him to be recognized as a professional. Because, Mr. Speaker, in the law society, or even in the accountant's profession, or the marketing profession, or the doctors and the clinical officers and those engineers board, they have clear requirements for one to be recognized as a profession. So it cannot be that we are just creating a board, and we are creating a board that is talking about professionals, but yet we have not defined who is a professional in that board, who is enough to be called a fire professional. Because if we take the Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, where I'm a member, it is clear that for you to be considered a professional in that area, you must have a degree in law. And then you have the postgraduate training, and it is stated. But here, we are not providing any form of training requirements. So, Mr. Speaker, I think at the stage of public participation, it will be necessary to bring the Fire and Rescue Training Center here in Nairobi. They have a fire and training center here, and I know it has been training some people, including some people from Tana River, so they can come and give some input. What is the minimum amount of training that is required so that one can be considered a professional? And this registrar, there must be some form of charges that are clearly stated that for you to be registered, you will pay this amount, or provisions for those kind of regulations. Because you cannot be a professional and they cannot process your professional certificate if there are no charges, so that everyone knows that for me to be a practicing fire and rescue practitioner, I must have a certificate, and this certificate renewed maybe every year. And I pay 1,000 shillings or 500 shillings for me to be considered an active person. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the bill is a very welcome bill, and it is a good thing because it is creating another level of professionalism and something that can make people be proud of their profession. They are developing another category of professions, of professionals that we require in this country. And Mr. Speaker, it is also a sign that Kenya is coming into another level, because I know that in more developed communities and countries, they have this as a very serious profession. And many people are proud to belong to those kinds of professions. But I would encourage the very able Senator Abbas to also look at some of this profession, of these thoughts that we have put, so that we can make this a very strong law and help the development of this profession to the levels that it is required. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support. Thank you.
Senator Olekina, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to make some brief comments on this proposed legislation by my good friend, Senator Abbas. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I'm not sure if I support this legislation because we seem to be on a trajectory of drafting, of over-legislating in this country. We're talking about austerity measures, we're talking about reducing expenses, and we're talking about fidelity to the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, if you take the Constitution and you look at Schedule 4, Section 12, you will see that firefighting is a devolved function. I've taken a few minutes, Mr. Speaker, to search through the net to see whether there is any one particular county that has established a piece of legislation to deal with firefighting. And indeed, Machakos County in 2023 did have a piece of legislation that deal with firefighting. Mr. Speaker, I've perused the objects and memorandum of this bill, reasons, and I'm a bit perplexed that instead of focusing on how firefighting is going to be dealt with, my colleague, who I want to persuade to relook at the bill and think it through a way that it can't take over devolved functions. If you look at one section, Mr. Speaker, Section 2, it says that in this act, unless the context otherwise requires, fire and rescue services consulting firm means registered private organization engaged in the provision of consultancy and advisory services pertaining to fire and rescue services. Mr. Speaker, to me, that is creating a job for people, for private companies, just like we saw the hurdles in the Social Health Fund Bill, where one section was put there to be able to channel all administrative services of health in this country to a private company. I want us to be very careful, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to dealing with matters that affect county governments. We're in this House to protect county governments. And when we now invite the national government, we must be very careful and ask ourselves very serious questions. I know there was that bill which we passed here, and it's now low in terms of on-source revenue pertaining to health facilities. And that has brought in a huge conflict between the CC Finance and the CC Health. Because when you read the PFM Act is quite clear that the head of Treasury in county government is the CC Finance. But the new piece of legislation that we passed in this House, which essentially allowed county government to spend their money, their hospital funds, on locally, without having to sweep the money to the county revenue fund, gave the CC in charge of health as the one who controlled that kitty. So it brings in a conflict between the two departments. Now here, we have this new legislation that my dear brother is proposing. And it says, Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill 2023. But the Constitution, in Schedule 4, Section 12, delegate the fire fighting services and disaster management to county governments. I think we need to ask ourselves two very straightforward questions. Do we want to provide fire services to counties, or do we want county governments and regulations to counties, or do we want each county, based on its own surrounding, its own environment, to develop their own legislation on how they are going to manage fire services, disaster management, just like the framers of the Constitution had in mind? I am not happy with bills that continue creating boards. Board, you create a board, then after you create that board, people are appointed to that board, that is money. And we're here saying we do not have money. Then you say you'll have a chairperson who shall be appointed by the cabinet secretary. I had my brother Senator Mongatano, questioning whether we have a cabinet secretary in charge of fire. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether this is a kind of bill that we should be proposing and passing in this House. I think we must be very critical on any piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, and I want to be very candid to my brother, because I want to support my brother on this bill, but I'm a little bit sort of like handicapped, because even if you read the statement of objects and reasons for the bill, if you read Part 4 of the bill provide for the financial provisions, it sets out the fund of the board, preparations of annual estimates, and keeping of books of accounts and audit. So, who is going to fund this board? Who is going to fund this board? That is my biggest question. Then when you come to the last statement, which every bill must have, especially for bills that originates from the Senate, it asks whether this bill offends Article 114 or relates to Article 114 of the Constitution, whether the bill is a money bill. And it says this bill is not a money bill. within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. And you've got issues that deal with intergovernmental agencies. You've got the national government here, because you've got control by the national government through the executive, and you've got the operationalization of it through the county government. What happens then to bills or to pieces of legislation which exist that have been passed by county governments? And we know very well that when there is a national government bill or law, it supersedes the county governments. So I think we must ask ourselves very serious and critical questions. And I want to invite my brother, Senator Abbas, to relook at this, to ask the same question that I'm asking, whether it is time we now look at other existing legislations to see how we can be able to embed a few of his very, very good ideas here. Some of his ideas are important. And I think we should be asking ourselves, how do we ensure that we send more monies to counties, conditional allocations, so that county governments can be able to set up fire departments in all their sub-counties? That is what we need to ask. But when we now create a board that takes money, I think we're over-legislating. You know? So we need to really rethink seriously. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because I don't want to re-emphasize the fact that I think this is not the correct bill to be debated in this House, or this is over-legislating, I think even our Secretariat, I'm going to, I support you a lot, but today I'm going to be a bit critical. Positive criticism, that I think you should advise us more. We should look at the legislations that we bring here. For once, can we bring legislations that do not end up being punitive to the public? We're already complaining that we are broke, that we have no money. But remember, every piece of law that passes ends up penalizing Kenyans, because you have to pay for that. There's no manna from heaven which will pay for that board, which will pay for those regulations to be put in place. Let us endeavor to support our county governments. Let us endeavor to work with our county governments. Look for more money. So, to end, my brother, I will only make those very candid comments. I will neither support nor oppose your bill, but I think from my presentation, you know where I stand. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Olekina. Senator Ali Roba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill. And I want to start by saying it's about time. I think, as shared by my colleague, Senator Olekina, there are quite a bit of observations that we can make to improve the current bill in a way that is going to be of critical value for the 47 county government. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to state that not all the 47 counties have built the right capacity for fire and rescue services. And counties are crippled, when it comes to fire department, proper establishment of fire services. I would wish the bill to go further in trying to set the standard to be accomplished by each of the 47 county governments by way of what a constituency headquarters, a county headquarters, and even the bigger towns are supposed to have as a bare minimum requirement in order to make sure that the bill compels our 47 county governments to comply by making sure that they prioritize investment in fire and rescue services within the 47 county governments. Mr. Speaker, sir, I say this because having been a governor for 10 years, I've, really noticed with a lot of experience the critical function of fire services and how the expanding urban centers are coming up with many challenges that require these services. Mr. Speaker, sir, however, in support of the bill, I wish to, propose a view that first, the establishment of this board should not be, the chairperson should not be appointed by a cabinet secretary, but the entire board should be competitively sourced as required. Number two, the representation from the counties should not be two, because you have 47 county governments and this is a devolved function. You cannot have a principal secretary responsible matters relating to prevention and principal secretary responsible for finance. That principal secretary ought not to have been there completely. And that position need to be moved to representation of county government. And instead of two positions, we needed to make sure that it becomes 4 positions in that requirement. And then two, because of the other gaps in existing regulation on fire and rescue services, the bill also needs to go deep into establishment of the standard to be accomplished by each county government. Because the nation Kenya is comprising of 47 county governments, each of these county governments must have certain standards that they must meet in terms of fire and rescue services. Also, the bill needed to address the need for establishment of a regional fire and rescue training center that then is going to help train, fire and rescue personnel to, the basic standard required with certification from an institution accredited in the country that is not only going to serve Kenya, but other regional, other governments, neighboring governments within the greater East African region will be able to use this entity. And the need for establishment of a regional fire and rescue training center that is sort of a college and institution, a university for that matter, for purpose of making sure that our workforce in terms of discipline, know-how, the expertise of fighting different types of fire, the first aid requirement that is supposed to be with them being the first line of defense against fire, they need to also be properly trained, and that is that needs to come out. And then on the issue that my colleague Senator Olekina has shared, which is very pertinent, is also the funding for this board and this entity need to be explicit and clear. Where is the source of fund that is going to help in establishing this? But other than that, generally the bill is very good. We can improve it, make sure that the gaps are addressed, and is one of the bills that once it put, and then the committee, and Senator Abbas, this also requires, we put a time frame of compliance. Once the bill is passed, within what period county governments required to comply with the requirements of this bill. With such improvement, this bill then is going to be extremely valuable for our 47 county governments. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ali Roba. Senator Madzayo Steward Mwashiru.
My brother here. Huh?
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza nataka kumpatia kongole ndugu yetu, mzee wetu Shakabas wa seneta wetu wa Wajir County. Kitu cha kwanza, kongole kwa sababu ya kutengeza sheria ambayo ni ya kuzima na kuokoa watu wakati wa moto ukitokea ama janga la moto. Sheria hii, Bwana Spika, ni sheria ambayo inaleta mwelekeo mpya. Pakiwa tumekuwa kwa muda mrefu na nafasi ambazo hazikuweza kukamilika kutengezwa kwa sheria ambayo itahusikana sana na uzimaji moto. Bwana Spika, kama tunavyoelewa, kazi ya kuzima moto ni kazi ambayo hivi sasa inafanywa na magavana wa county. Lakini iko na kasoro, kama nitakosoa kidogo upande wa wale magavana wetu ambao wanahusikana na kuangalia jukumu hili ambalo ni muhimu sana. Tumeona kitu cha kwanza, magari ambayo yameweza kuletwa katika kaunti zetu ambayo yamewekwa kama ni kuzima moto, ni magari yamenunuliwa sijui ni ya mwaka gani, yakawekwa paint ama yakawekwa rangi, yakaonekana mapya, alafu yakaletwa yakapakiwa pale kwa ofisi za county. Hakuna hata moja ambayo imejengewa mahali vizuri kama vile tunaona, isipokuwa pengine Mombasa ndio wako na station ya fire fighting, ama station ile ambayo magari ya moto, ya kuzima moto yanawekwa pale, na staff wale professionals ama wale wenye taaluma ya kupigana na moto wanawekwa pale ili kuweza kutambuliwa pale wanaweza kupatikana na kazi zao wanazofanya. Bwana Spika, mara nyingi tunaona katika county, pengine kwa mfano county yangu ambao ni Kilifi County, Bwana Spika, tunaona ya kwamba wale wanaofanya kazi ile ya kuzima moto ni lazima wawe na training. Na si training tu, lazima wajifundishe iwe ni taaluma yao. Waweze kupelekwa katika kilasi ama katika college yale ambayo yanahusikana na mambo ya kuzima moto. Bwana Spika, vitu kama hivyo vinakosekana. Mtu anaandikwa, anaambiwa utakuwa ukizima moto, ukishika pipe unamwaga maji namna hii. Lakini utapata mara nyingi, Bwana Spika, taaluma ile ya kuzima moto sio kushika pipe na kumwaga tu pale ambapo pako na moto. Hapana. Kunatakikana pia ujue upepo unapiga pande gani, unatakikana ujue ni utasimama wapi ndio uweze kupiga kutengeza ile shughuli ambayo imekupeleka pale ya kuzima moto ama ya kuokoa maisha wakati moto umetokea, ya kuokoa maisha ya wale watu ambao wameathirika. Bwana Spika, sisi tunajua kuna hasara huwa zinatokea mara kwa mara. Sheria hii ni sheria ambayo imeweza kuangalia matumaini hayo. Lakini cha kwanza ni kwamba, Bwana Spika, tunaona wale ambao tuna wakabidhi kazi hizo katika kule county, na jambo la kusikitisha kwamba hivi sasa bado hatujapata wale wenye taaluma. Tunaandika tu vijana, tunawaambia sasa nyinyi mtakuwa mkizima moto. Lakini wale ambao wameandikwa katika zile department, ningeweza kumuuliza ndugu yangu kama tunaweza kugeuza vipengele fulani hapa ndani kuona ya kwamba hao watu wote ambao wanafanya kazi katika eneo lile wawe wanaweza kuwekwa katika insurance cover. Manake ile kazi wanaofanya ni hatari. Unaweza kupanda juu ya ngazi, unaweza kupanda juu ya nyumba ukienda kuzima moto, ukaanguka ama ukapata hasara fulani, ama ukateleza ukaingia ndani ya moto ule ambao wewe unauzima. Kwa hiyo tunasema kwamba lazima kuwe na kitu kama insurance cover ambao ni kitu muhimu sana kwa wale ambao wanafanya kazi hii ya kuzima moto. Bwana Spika, tunajua vile kunao wale wanaofanya kazi saa nyingine huwa wanazembea. Wanafanya kazi, mtu anakuja kazini, anaketi pale mahali ambapo panatakana kama yeye ni dereva. Notice kama ile inatokea, anaambiwa mnaenda kuzima moto mahali fulani. Ukimwangalia Bwana Spika, mtu mwenyewe haezi kupeleka ile gari kwa sababu pengine jana alikesha ndani ya klabu akiwa mlevi. ama kwa upande mwingine anaweza kosa kuja kazini, pengine ni mgonjwa. Sababu kama hizo, Bwana Spika, sisi tunazielewa, lakini hali ya uvunjaji sheria, ikiwa wewe unatumaini la watu ni kwamba wewe unaweza wakati wote kutokea janga kama lile la moto, wewe unaweza kupatikana haraka na ukaenda ukasaidia ama ukasave maisha ya watu ambao wamepatikana na hiyo athari. Bwana Spika, mara nyingi moto huu ukitoka, huwa watu tumaini lao liko katika wale wazima moto. Mimi mwenyewe nataka kusema katika ile experience yangu, mimi katika miaka iliyokwisha kama miwili, nyumba yangu iliwahi kushika moto na kuchomeka kule pande za Mtwapa. Bwana Spika, niliweza kupiga simu mimi kama senator, nikapiga simu nataka gari ya moto zile ambazo zinapakiwa pale zije zinisaidie, lakini hakuna gari hata moja iliweza kufika. Gari iliyofika pale ni ile ambayo tulikwenda mpaka Mtwapa tukasema ikuje haraka sana, na wale vijana hawakuangalia ndani kama kuna maji ama hakuna maji. Gari ilikuja, ikifika pale, na ni ambulance inakuja ile gari ya kuzima moto, ikifika pale hawana maji. Sasa unaweza kufikiria mimi kama senator leo wa county ile, na magari kama hayo yameweza kuletwa, yalinunua kwa mamilioni, lakini utapata ya kwamba gari imekuja mpaka pale mahali, wakijaribu kufungua, pengine gari yenyewe pia haifanyi kazi, haina nguvu ya ile power ya kutoa maji ya moto, ya kutoa maji kuzima ule moto. Kwa hiyo tunasema ya kwamba jambo kama hili si jambo la kuchekesha, manake itakuwa hasara. Mimi niliingia hasara na nikachomewa, nyumba ikachomeka, ikamalizika, lakini tunashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu hakuna mtu alipata hasara ya kuumia. Ya mwisho, Bwana Spika, magari haya pia vile vile lazima yaangaliwe, hususan ya kwamba magari haya mara nyingi utapata hizi kaunti zetu, magari yale ya watu kwenda kutembea ama kufanya kazi zao mbalimbali za kaunti yanapatikana, lakini lazima kuwe na sheria muafaka ambao pengine ndugu yangu Abasa anaweza kuangalia. Magari haya yakitengezwa yapewe muda ule yanaweza kutumika, kama ni miaka miwili, miaka mitatu, na iondolewe ili gari nyingine iweze kuletwa, ili kuona ya kwamba magari ya kisawasawa yataweza kufanya ile kazi. Cha pili, lazima kuhakikisha kwamba magari hayo yako na mafuta na yako katika hali nzuri ya kutengezeka, ya kwamba yanaweza wakati wote ukipiga simu usiku ama mchana, magari hayo yanaweza kupatikana. Tunaona ugonjwa huo uko katika kaunti, na hizi kaunti zetu unaweza piga simu ukangoja, ukaambiwa tunakuja mpaka ule moto ukachoma mpaka ukateketeza kila kitu na gari hazijaonekana. Bwana Spika, itakuwa vyema ikiwa sisi hapa leo tutazingatia sheria hii ambayo itakuwa na bodi yake, itakuwa na sheria zake, kuona ya kwamba kuanzia wakati sheria hii ikiwa ikifaulu, Bwana Spika, wale wanaohusikana na mambo haya watakuwa wanaweza kuzingatia sheria hizi za kuzima moto na kuokoa jamii ama wananchi ama mali ile ambayo ilikuwa inapatikana na hasara ya kuteketezwa. Asante Bwana Spika.
Thank you, Senator Madzayo. Senator Mutinda Tabitha Maureen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me start appreciating Senator Abbas for this particular bill, which I rise, Mr. Speaker, to support. And before I get into the articles of the bill, the reason I support, Mr. Speaker, is because most of our residents, particularly in Nairobi, have really been affected with the issue of fire. The fire tragedy really affects the urban sector very much. Not to say, of course, the other areas do not get the same effect, but in percentage-wise, Nairobi, being the capital city, is highly affected by this. I've looked at the bill. One of the key things that come out, or I've also realized, Mr. Speaker, which I keenly want Senator Abbas to note, is the fact that I've not seen any association for the firefighters. But if it's in place, well and good. But an association is very important. It's very key. I've seen in the bill whereby is talked about membership of the people in the profession of firefighting. But a step further of an association would be a bigger plus to the team. Mr. Speaker, the team for firefighters play a very key role. Rescue, at that particular time, it's a matter of life and death. But we have a team that, even before I proceed further, let me take the opportunity to really appreciate our firefighters in this country. They do a great job. They go out of their way to save lives. The association, Mr. Speaker, as I've said earlier, will be able to bring them together. We'll be able also to give them an opportunity to modify their skills, look at the modern ways of the profession. It will be a platform also for them to be able to air their concerns, and many other things that any association, Mr. Speaker, will do. They will also have representatives in case of issues. They'll be able to air them out and iron them out, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most of the times when I'm looking at the issue of the bills, I'm also keen on what touches on the qualification. Clause 18 talks about a person shall be eligible for registration as a fire and rescue services professional if such a person has a degree, a diploma or certificate in a fire and rescue services course from a recognized institution in Kenya or equivalent qualification, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say that it is good, it is positive that the qualification is much more specific to the role of the service that is supposed to be offered, because it is specified it needs to be a fire and rescue services course from a recognized institution, which is very important. Why am I citing this, Mr. Speaker? Article 18 of this bill. We've heard that currently, even in Nairobi, you find that the people in the fire department have got a different line of professionalism. What has come out is that, for example, we have people who've done theology, we've had people who've done librarian work, and they are in this profession. When this question was posed by one of our colleagues, actually the Senator of Nairobi, the feedback seemed to be like we need to have someone who's done theology, to offer guidance and counseling. But Mr. Speaker, you agree with me that also there is a psychiatrist, certification, either degree or diploma level, that offers the same counseling services for the victims who've been affected. So what is the business of someone who's done theology, someone who's done librarian work, to be on the front line offering this rescue services? You can't compare that person with someone who has the qualification of a fire and rescue services course that has been attained in the recognized institution. So Article 18A is great. It has been well put. Mr. Speaker, I've seen there's the clause for the fund, and of course it raises questions, because look at where we are in terms of more monies in the different institutions. Today, the National Assembly is on the supplementary, budgets and extreme budget cuts after the finance bill could not go through. And advocating for more bodies and more funds, then the question is, where are these funds going to come from? Because as we speak right now, with the massive budget cuts, we as a country, the focus is lessening the budgets that are in place. But because we have these departments within the county levels, this is where we would much tell the county governments to work on increasing their own source revenue. It's something that we've shouted about, it's something that we've spoken. Because soon, as the Committee of Finance, will be amending the Division of Revenue Bill. It can't be 400 billion. Yes, it can be, depending on the decision of the voting of the members. But if we are at a point of budget cuts, then even Division of Revenue, we need to accept that definitely counties will be affected. So on-source revenue should be the main focus for the county governments, so that even the department of the fire department, it can have the resources that they need. Which are some of these resources? A skill, Mr. Speaker, is a resource. When the personnel in this particular department have continuous training budgets, it sharpens their skills, makes them offer better services. Apart from the machinery factor, which these are the tangible assets, the skill is very key. It's one thing for someone to have the machinery in terms of the big lorries that we see equipped with the materials like the water, among others that are needed, but that personnel handling that particular machinery needs to have the prerequisite skill. We've seen in professions, other professions, service professions, whereby there is always certification of the different course or the different specialization that requires continuous training. So in this particular continuous training, the bill should include, and I'm just a bit disappointed if the owner of the bill has just left the chamber, because then I don't know who will amend this bill. But in terms of certification, continuous certification after maybe a duration of 6 months, 1 year, depending on the level, so that people continue to have more knowledge and more skill through this particular training, and appreciation by being offered different levels of certification will be able to help the firefighters be able to embark on the role and achieve what is needed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 17 talks about no person shall practice as a fire and rescue consultant, a fire rescue service professional, or operate a private fire brigade firm unless are registered and licensed in accordance with the provisions of this Act. Very important. Mr. Speaker, when I compare this with the agents who have been doing recruitment work, for taking our young people to the Gulf countries for job opportunities, we've seen situations whereby rogue agents, cartels, who have used their platforms to take these young people who are so willing to go and make a living, but they are diverted to contracts which they did not even sign for. So, on the emphasis of Article 17, whereby they should be registered and licensed in accordance with the provisions of the Act. Very important, because then you cannot operate a fire and a rescue service consultant if you are not registered. It's very key, comes out very importantly, and this is what is going to help not have rogue people who are always for money making and not looking at the service that they really need to offer, Mr. Speaker. Article 20, Mr. Speaker, talks about also registration in terms of who are the owners. 20C talks about at least 51% of the shares in the firm are held by a Kenyan citizen. Positive, Mr. Speaker. This then gives our people a platform to be able to open their own firms and have a majority of the shares. Because at times you might not have enough capital to start, but you might have a partner who's willing to be able to come in, you co-join, and start the consultancy services. But at least it gives advantage to the Kenyan citizen to be able to have majority, hence much more shares and much more control, Mr. Speaker. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, Article 7E talks about register and the rescue professionals in Kenya. As far as the Employment Act is concerned, Mr. Speaker, we have the agents that I talked about earlier who are registered in this within the Employment Authority. So it is important that all these consultants will still be registered and within the database. And also, apart from registration, it's one thing to be registered and it's one thing to have all the prerequisites, including the right dimensions of the office, of the personnel that you are recruiting should be a qualified personnel. And also there should be enough machinery for you to be licensed to have the consultant. It goes in handy very well. Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi, just early this year, we had the fire tragedy. We've had so many of them, especially after these gas explosions, the issues of the spillage of the oil, and it affects our people in the city. We've had delay. We've seen at times there has been less compensation to the victims, whereby that has been promised. But I'm sure with this bill in place, with the board being in place, they are going to ensure that the people who are affected, they are also compensated, not only compensation, but timely compensation, Mr. Speaker. The board, I've seen, it will develop many other things, code of conduct and what comes with it. And it is good, it is very well articulated, and it's going to take, I think, care of what needs to be done moving forward. Just an emphasis, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, is to say that governors should take the Department of Fire very seriously. This is someone's life is in danger, and this is the time that the service is highly needed. So I believe this bill, in conjunction also with the national government, on many other risk management issues, will be able to provide the service and the need that is needed. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, every county should also prepare to have a risk management policy which guides and takes care on this, takes care of these matters moving forward. With those many few remarks, I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Tabitha. Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also rise to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, disaster management in all developed countries takes the center stage, especially in urban development. It becomes an integral part of physical planning, and more so because increased population density per square kilometer comes with increased risks. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's the high time we as a country and the county government start looking at the importance of having disaster management. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, goes a long way in establishing a framework that can be used, Mr. Speaker, to set up this important infrastructure. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important to note that the diversity of our 47 counties, both in terms of population and in terms of the physical planning, will mean that it will not be possible to adopt a one-size-fits-all kind of a solution. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important to come up with policies that will guide the framework within which each individual county will come up with a policy framework and also come up with the infrastructure that will be able to address their issues. Mr. Speaker, sir, counties that are more rural-based will have lesser densely populated population per square kilometer as opposed to capital or city-based counties. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, will mean that even the approach we take in procuring the equipment that will be used, Mr. Speaker, must be adopted to suit the specifications of that particular county. As I say this, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to pass my message of condolences to a business person who passed on in Kiawara through a fire tragedy just a couple of days ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, Had we had firefighting equipment, that disaster could have been averted. The problem is, Mr. Speaker, we have heavily borrowed from the Western countries. We buy expensive, huge machines, firefighting machines, which at times are not suitable to negotiate the narrow roads we have in rural areas, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, many a times we've had fire breaking out, but the firefighters are not able to access the sites because the machines they are using have not been tailor-made to drive around the terrain that we have in our country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we implement this bill, Mr. Speaker, it is paramount and it is imperative that we look at the needs of each and every county. There are counties, Mr. Speaker, sir, which have smaller towns which lie far away from each other, and therefore it would be prudent, instead of buying big machines that are very expensive, to acquire smaller machines that can be allocated these areas so that we shorten the travel times. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the Gen Z demonstrations, some of the businesses which were burnt down in Nanyuki, one of them belonging to one member of Parliament of Kieni, they did not have a firefighting machine. They had to get one from Nyeri County. And when it got there, Mr. Speaker, sir, it broke down and therefore it was not able to put out fire. We had to get one from Kirinyaga County. You can imagine the total time taken for a fire engine to drive all the way from Kirinyaga to Laikipia. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is therefore imperative that as we come up with the framework, we also look at the needs of each and every county and ensure that the machines that they are using, the equipment they are using, are tailor-made to suit their own needs. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also not lost to us that in our curriculum development, firefighting has not been taken up as a training to ensure that we have well-prepared firefighters. In the developed country, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm saying this because I lived for over 20 years in Germany, firefighting as a training is a course, 3 years course that's offered to people who are dedicated, who are well trained, not only to fight fire, but also to give first aid courses, first aid services, as well as also basic medical care. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that most of the firefighters we have in our country are employed and given short-term training. They are ill-equipped. They do not have the light PPEs, and whenever they are confronted with fire, and especially if it is a fire that is hazardous, like the one we had in Mirandi or the one we had in Sashagwani, we end up losing a lot of lives. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, to avert such occurrences in the future, it is also important that now we look at our curriculum, we look at what we are offering in our TVETs, and even start considering and bending firefighting courses as one of the basic units that should be trained in schools. And I say this as Senator Abbas walks back. It is the high time that we now start addressing the issues that were raised by the Gen Z, where we have a solution-oriented kind of training that will not only create employment, but also enable the young people, the young generation, the young readers of tomorrow to be able to take the leadership of this country, and that includes the services to offer such a service like firefighting. The Senator has also come up with this good bill, and I want to commend him. The austerity measures that we are talking about saving cost. Mr. Speaker, sir, when it comes to the issue of saving life, there is no amount that can be justifiable to say this would be too much to spend to save a life. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think some of these services are so important. We can be able to look at leakages, and we can be able to look at wastages that occur elsewhere, and therefore be able to establish such an important services. And I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, as the chair of the Energy Committee, having been able to conduct an inquiry on the occurrence of the Murandi gas explosion, we know it is the laxity of the law enforcement officers. We know that it's the loopholes and the gaps that have been left by EPLA as they're enforcing all of the regulator to ensure that the gaps are sealed that led to such an occurrence. Mr. Speaker, sir, in future, we know that can be avoided if we come up with strategic measures. And when I talk about strategic measures, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is one of the few countries in the world where you'll find that a gas tanker, a fuel tanker, they are all parked alongside each other, along other vehicles. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a high time we also come up with policies to have designated parking spaces for those trucks that are carrying materials that are hazardous, that are explosive, that are flammable, that we ensure that the risks of such accidents occurring are reduced. Mr. Speaker, sir, that will also go a long way to ensure that most of the disasters that are caused by carelessness or mishandling of those explosive or those flammable cargo can be avoided. Mr. Speaker, sir, another major cause of fires, and especially in the rural settlement, is the electrification. We know that this country, we have a shortage of qualified electricians, and whenever wiring is done, Mr. Speaker, sir, we find that there's a lot of short-circuiting, and as a process, we've ended up losing a lot of lives because of things that can be avoided. As we come up with this strategy, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we come up with this bill, Mr. Speaker, it would be also important to ensure that we have legislative pieceworks that are in place to ensure that we also maintain standards which will ensure that these accidents do not appear. As I console with the family of Mushomba in Kavendera in Kiawara, who lost his life through fire tragedy, it is important, Mr. Speaker, sir, also to note that the county governments have not listened up to the occasion of ensuring that the fire services are moved closer to the people. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would advise us as senators to ensure that when we are conducting our oversight law, one of the things that we ensure will be enforced is that firefighting equipment can adopt to the conditions on the ground. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've seen many counties buy 10-wheelers as firefighting engines. But if you look at their roads, Mr. Speaker, sir, they are too narrow to allow these motor vehicles to pass. So has happened several times in the slum areas. Because of poor physical planning, the firefighters, they do not have access, and therefore they end up coming too late when the fire has destroyed everything. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we look at forward to implementing this bill, I will request my fellow Senator, Senator Abbas, as he looks at the operationalization, to also look at the practicability of having standards set up, put in place, adaptability of the same in different counties, and the diversity of those regulations, so that each and every county can be able to come up with a minimum standard that's adaptable in their county. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
I call upon Senator Mogeni Eric Okongwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me an opportunity to also contribute to this bill. I start, Mr. Speaker, by thanking Senator Mohammed Abbas Sheikh, Senator of Wajir, who has conceived this fire and rescue services professional bill. That's a good industry from our senior citizen, Senator Abbas, and I want to commend him for being a very good representative of the people of Wajir. The Speaker, Wajir is one of our very expansive counties. If I recall, it covers more than 55,000 square kilometers with a population of 781. So for Senator Abbas to conceive and present this idea, it shows that he really cares about the people of Wajir. So we thank you, Senator, and we will make some comments to enrich this bill. Mr. Speaker, I first begin by raising an issue with the way Senator Abbas has conceived this bill to look like we are inviting CS from the national level to come and manage a function that is fully devolved. The last I checked, Mr. Speaker, sir, firefighting services, I believe under paragraph 12 of the fourth schedule, is a fully devolved function. Fully devolved. And Article 10 the way the national values in Article 10 were conceived, we want to share power and devolve power to our counties. So I will be making proposals, Senator Abbas, that we do away with this idea of wanting to give a cabinet secretary powers to appoint chairman of board on a function that is fully devolved. General comment number 2, Mr. Speaker, is that fire disasters have caused a lot of pain, a lot of losses to very many business people in counties. And many counties have not adequately prepared to deal with fire disasters. 2 weeks ago, I had a fire disaster in my own county of Nyamira, in a constituency where I was born, West Mogirango, in a market called Kebirigo. And you will be surprised, Mr. Speaker, that our county government was not able to respond to that fire disaster. They were not able. I'm saying this with a very heavy heart and with vicarious embarrassment on behalf of my governor. He was not able to send a firefighting machine to go and stop that fire disaster because the only vehicle, firefighting vehicle we have in the county government of Nyamira was lacking brakes, Mr. Speaker. A firefighting engine lacking brakes. We had to seek help from Sasini factory to send a vehicle to a firefighting engine vehicle to Kebirigo market to put out the fire. So I'm saying this to emphasize the fact that we need a law in place so that we can guide our governors on how they need to respond to fire disasters. But having said that, number 2, I also want to appeal to our governors. When we get conditional grants from donors, and this money, when it comes to us, Mr. Speaker, it's not money for free. It's money that is paid with interest using taxpayers' money. It should be utilized well for the benefit of people who reside in counties. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, sir, because we were given 50 million shillings under a CUSP grant to build a fire station in the county of Nyamira. This has been ongoing for the last 2 years. We're having serious audits in our audit report. The BQs were not followed. It is, it is being questioned by the auditor that one of the floors was omitted. Some things you can't understand, how a governor can be given money from a donor with specifications that use this to build a fire station, and you are not able to deliver. So 2 years down the line, my good friend, Governor of Nyamira, Governor Nyaribo, has not finalized completion of that fire station. It's a big shame, and we continue appealing to our governors to utilize donor money that is given as conditional grants to our counties. To the people of Kebirigo, we say pole for those of you who lost their property, whose buildings were damaged, who were subjected to loss because the county government, through our governor, was not able to respond timely. We hope that these are things that in future can be rectified by our governor. Now, I will propose that this board that we are proposing to set up in paragraph, in section 4, Mr. Speaker, this board, my proposal would be, Senator Abbas, because firefighting is a fully devolved function, this board should be a board that is created in each county. We don't make it a board that is as a national government approach character, but we make it as a board that will be domiciled in each of our 47 counties, Mr. Speaker. And when we go to the composition, let the chairperson be a person picked at the respective counties. We don't need the CS to pick a board to be in charge of firefighting. These are devolved function. Let these boards be domiciled at counties, this chairperson, so that we have transparency. We also don't want governors to be given powers to pick their cronies. We want a professional, somebody who has knowledge in this field. I'll propose, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this chairperson be somebody that is picked competitively by the County Public Service Board at each of our respective counties. Then the composition. Mr. Speaker, we don't need all these principal secretaries. They are not executing any function of firefighting. So why are we proposing that we pick principal secretary responsible for matters dealing with fire prevention? I am not so sure, Mr. Speaker, that we have a principal secretary that has been assigned these duties. I have my serious reservations, Senator Abbas, that there is a PS who is running a department called Fire Prevention and Disaster Risk Management. I have my doubts, Mr. Speaker. But we can replace that with a CEC in our county whose docket includes fire prevention and disaster. Because I'm sure in a county there must be a CEC who is in charge of this docket. Then, yes, I'd like to be informed by Senator of Kakamega, Senator Galwal. And don't inform me about the CSS who are nominated
Senator
this afternoon.
Okongo,
I'm giving you a caveat.
Senator Okongo,
yes,
if
Mr.
you
Speaker,
have accepted to be informed,
but
it
I
is
must,
the prerogative of Senator
Mr. Speaker,
Boni
sir,
Halwale
he must inform me relevant to the
very well, Senator Okongo,
to the contribution I'm making before the
take
floor,
your seat to
but
be
not
informed.
on the CSS.
Take your seat to be informed, and I was indicating that as long as you have allowed Senator Boni Halwale to inform you, it is within his powers on what information, of course, relevant to what
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Senator of Kisii, of Nyamira, for this opportunity to inform him. And your fears should never concern you. If I was to inform anybody about what you alluded to, it's not you. It is Senator Gloria Ruoba. He's the one who was harboring hopes of landing the Ministry of Gender, Mr. Speaker. So allow me, Senator, to inform you that the purpose of making law, Senator, is not just to legislate for the present. Whereas you are right that that kind of docket does not exist. But going forward, another president will come and constitute his cabinet in such a manner that your concerns would be accommodated in that particular docket. Thank you for allowing me to inform you.
Proceed, Senator Okongo Mogeta.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my sympathies with Senator Gloria, who has suffered terrible loss of expectation this afternoon from from the ambitions she was harboring of joining cabinet, but I assure her that when we form our government in 2027, we'll consider her. Mr. Speaker, the point I was making is that Senator Halwale, under the fourth schedule, paragraph 12, firefighting services are fully devolved. So I don't think there is any future president who will create a department for a function like firefighting that is fully devolved. But the point I'm making is this bill is too heavy on presentation, on membership. You know, this board, if you read through, Mr. Speaker, it has got 3 PSs sitting in the board. That's too heavy. And remember, somewhere there we have said they'll be paid some allowances. I think this is too heavy. Because other than that, you have PS Finance, and I don't think they're going to give us any money. They will tell you have already gotten your allocation. Okay? You have a PS Interior. You know? We don't need policemen to help us in firefighting. So the point I'm making is let's pick CECs from the relevant dockets from our county government I have no problem with the Red Cross. They do good work in responding to some of these disasters. I'm not so sure, Mr. Speaker, that we need COG. COG is domiciled in Nairobi. But we can pick the traders, Mr. Speaker. The traders are the ones who are mostly affected when firefighting comes in. They are the ones who can bring concerns to our counties, tell them how they have suffered before. So I'll propose that instead of looking for COG, we look for business community to nominate somebody to sit in this board. It's okay to have somebody from National Fire Brigades. Kenya Medical Association, again, national body based in Nairobi. We can have a body of medical practitioners, again, domiciled our counties. If we want, maybe when you send a firefighting station, you also send an ambulance. We can get good input from any organization at the local level that represents the medical practitioners. Two, Speaker, while on the same point, the appointments should now be done by governors, if my proposed amendments can carry the day. We don't need a cabinet secretary in a gazette notice to pick our board for fighting fire at our counties. You know, the Constitution is telling us we want power to be devolved. Yes, let power be devolved. Once we have picked these guys, Mr. Speaker, our governor can issue a gazette notice appointing them from our respective counties. So I don't think we need the minister to appoint this board. Then going to paragraph 7, I don't know whether we can render any advice on firefighting to national government. So I'll propose that the advice be restricted to our county governments, because they are the ones we want to advise so that they can put in place adequate measures to respond to any fire disaster. So I'll propose that, again, we do away with this issue of national government. This is a function of counties. We want to empower our counties. We want to ensure that this function that is fully devolved can also be done adequately and ably by our county government. It's a good thing to recognize that there is a professional body. I didn't know that there is one. It's a good thing to note that there is a professional body that deals with people who deal with fire and rescue services. I don't know which university offers this degree or it's a diploma, but it's good to recognize. If this professional body is there, then it's good we give it the prominence it has been given in this bill. That's a very good proposal, Senator Abbas. Now going to the rest, I have no problem with the powers of the board in Section 8. I have no problem with the committees of the board. If we get the composition right, I have no problem with what is in 9. The point I may have to comment is on Section 12, which says that if you resign to the CS. Let the resignation be to the governor. You are a board member, the county, you want to resign, tender your resignation to the governor. We don't need to resign to addressing that resignation to the CS. So it's a devolved function. A county governor is the chief executive. It's a mini president. So you tender your resignation to him. That is in paragraph 12. Again, payment of allowances, we can restrict it to SRC. There is now nothing much the CS will do. The CS finance will do to set remuneration. Under the Constitution, this is a service that is reserved for SRC. So we can delete reference to the CS and just leave SRC. In consultation with the respective governors, set the remuneration. I have seen the penalties and fines, Mr. Speaker, I think that is in Part 5, offences and penalties. I don't know. Personally, I'm of the view that the penalties is too huge. You know, you are saying a person who willingly processes or attempts to procure registration fraudulently, if convicted, will pay a fine of 500,000. Mr. Speaker, I'll propose that we make these penalties reasonable and in tandem with our economy. If we set it at 500,000, that is too high. I'll propose that we put it at 100,000. That's reasonable. Then there is another one created in Section 31, offenses by persons or training institutions. Okay? Again, you're saying that any person who issues any document or statement, certificate in a fraudulent manner, you are saying if he's convicted, upon conviction, he will pay a fine of 2 million. That's too high, Senator Abbas. Propose that we reduce this money, this sum, to a reasonable figure of around 200,000 shillings. Finally, at Section 36, making of regulations. Again, I'm not so sure whether we want to give this power to CS National. This can be done by our county attorneys. We don't need to pass over this to CS National government. So in sum total, I fully associate myself with this initiative by my good friend, Senator Abbas. Let us support it. Let us create a framework to guide our governors how to respond to fire and rescue services. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I hope our senators, Mr. Speaker, you know, I was just reading the communique, Mr. Speaker, from the President on the vetting of cabinet secretaries, and I've been thinking that as a House, Mr. Speaker, we need to have a conversation whether the framework we have in place, where vetting of virtually all appointees of the executive are vetted by National Assembly. There is most countries where you have a Senate, even if you go to the US, House of Representatives can generate budget, deal with issues of budget, but vetting of CSS should be done by the House called Senate, Mr. Speaker. So my time is up, but kudos, Senator Abbas, and we support this very progressive bill. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Omogeni, Senior Counsel. Senator Roba Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to weigh in this very, let me say, informative bill that is necessary. Mr. Speaker, before I go in, I'd just like to make a few remarks and tell my colleague, Senator Omogeni and Senator Halwale, that I accept their concerns. Just to remind them that I'm 38 years old and I'm literally an amateur in politics, so I have a long journey ahead. But also, Mr. Speaker, to let them know that I have such high confidence in the nominee for gender, Mr. Speaker. In fact, people should know that she has an extensive administrative background, and part of it is that she actually was a deputy county commissioner in my sub-county, Sameta County. So as fate would have it, I believe we are going to have very good chemistry, and I believe she's competent enough to actually push the agenda of the gender agenda. So I'm happy with that nominee, and I hope that once she's vetted and she passes at the National Assembly vetting, that we'll be able to continue with the good work that we have been doing in this space of gender. Mr. Speaker, I want to add my voice on this fire and rescue services professional bill. Mr. Speaker, finally we are trying to professionalize and clean up that industry, Mr. Speaker. I've been listening to my colleagues talking about the standards that are out there in terms of fire and rescue services globally, Mr. Speaker. One of the things you will notice is in Kenya, you only need to take a course for 2 to 3 days, and then you are certified as a fire safety professional, Mr. Speaker. In other industries, because they have professionalized this skill, and they have turned this industry into an industry that many people actually aspire. Children who are out there, when you ask them, what would you like to be? Some of them will wake up and say, I want to be a fire safety professional. But not in Kenya. In Kenya, nobody thinks about that. In Kenya, we have thousands and thousands of youth going out there because they only know of desk jobs, you know, or the only things that we are promoting is lawyers, medical practitioners, you know, and those kind of crafts and skills, Mr. Speaker. But we look down upon our TVET industry. Yet, we have an opportunity here to be intentional about professionalizing the fire and safety services industry so that people can aspire to actually want to be in that space, Mr. Speaker. So I want to first of all congratulate Senator Abbas for bringing this bill, because one thing it does, it cleans up the mess that we have there. Every single time we have an issue in terms of a fire, we are always looking at each other. People say, oh, but there's a fire and rescue from the county government. Oh, but the national government also has a budget to deal with this kind of catastrophic issues. And it's never really been clear. So finally, this is one of the bills, the pieces of legislations that brings foresight so that we can now start understanding how do we organize this space, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we are talking about how to organize the board and the technicalities of even the asset management and making sure that we have the proper equipment, Mr. Speaker, I want to pay attention to certification, skill sets, and how we are promoting that industry. Unfortunately, not much is in the bill about that, but I want to just highlight that in Kenya, I think there are only 4 or 5 institutions that are offering this kind of technical skills expert training. You have the ICT College in Thika, Eldoret Technical Institute, and 3 others or so, Mr. Speaker. And if you go and look at what they are offering, it is a certificate course. Some that take a month, some that take just short courses, Mr. Speaker. Yet, the global industry standards, we have people out there, fire safety professionals, who actually take up certification in fire science, who take up degrees in emergency management, which now has a sort of holistic approach on the issue of fire safety, Mr. Speaker. This is something that we need to talk about. We can't keep trying to churn out lawyers, medics, teachers. Mr. Speaker, at one point, we have to understand the supply demand is not working. The maths is not mathing. How many teachers can you have? How many lawyers can you have, Mr. Speaker? I think in this house itself, 70% of the people sitting here have a background in law, Mr. Speaker. But when you look on the other side, like fire and rescue services, literally a handful. That is why on the county governments, when they are even trying to pick people who are going to work in that department, they end up calling their cousins with a background in plumbing, their relatives with no certification in anything, because we have simply not professionalized that space. Mr. Speaker, when we legislate, and I hope we pass this, and we clean up this space, and we devolve this to all the 47 counties that we have, Mr. Speaker, if we are truly intentional about what we are doing in this house, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the huge avenues where we can have many of our youth employed in dignified jobs, Mr. Speaker. When I talk about dignified jobs, it's jobs that you are proud to stand and say, by the way, I am Gloria Roba, I am a fire and safety service professional, Mr. Speaker. That you can even register yourself in an association because you are proud to be part of that industry, Mr. Speaker. And this is what this bill is actually trying to do, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I have noticed is that when we are legislating, we pay so much attention in who is sitting in the committee, who is going to be the chair of that committee, who is going to be the secretary of that committee. That's very good because those are roles that we need, Mr. Speaker.
But when we look at the responsibilities of those committees, sometimes we forget the very important things, such as asset management, Mr. Speaker. Because I can see that we have talked about procuring those equipments that we need for fire safety, but we never talk about asset management, the lifespan, Mr. Speaker. My background, one of my backgrounds, because I have a diverse background, Mr. Speaker, I don't know why my fellow senators like Senator Halwale only assumes that I am an expert in gender, Mr. Speaker. I have a very diverse background. I have a background in architecture. That was my diploma. I have a background in community work. I am a senior critical facilities manager who did not just manage a small hospital here, but a huge data center that employed over 1,500 people, all under my command, Mr. Speaker. So I have a diverse background. And in my diverse background, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you, one of the things that we need to pay attention to is asset management and the lifespan. What happens once you have bought that fire safety truck? What is the lifespan? Once we are done with that truck, if the lifespan is, we have said is 5 years or 10 years, how do we get rid of those assets? How do we then reinvest whatever little gains we get from that back into the business of these fire and rescue services, Mr. Speaker? I would wish that in that particular spirit, that we would be able to elaborate within this law some, and I know that maybe that can be anchored in the regulations, but I wish that we would be able to register some of that information within parts of the amendments, and I will seek Senator Abbas's guidance on that, because I think that's something that we don't necessarily look into, and that's why, as Senator Omogeni has said, when there's a fire, suddenly in Nyamira, the truck can't go on, and maybe it's an issue of maintenance or an issue of the lifespan of the assets that we have there. That is something that we need to consider when we are legislating, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, professionalizing the industry also requires that we acknowledge the associations. And I believe Senator Tabitha Mutinda has actually pointed that out. In the spirit of ensuring that this bill is welcomed and is actually, let me not say, has the goodwill of those already in the industry, Mr. Speaker, I urge for Senator Abbas to call some sort of public participation or engagement with the associations that already exist with the fire and rescue services, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, with my background in critical facilities management, one thing that I would like to add my voice on it, and I will see on what level, either through an amendment or something in the bill, is resiliency planning, Mr. Speaker. This country, both on a national platform and on a county platform, does not have any framework or institutions that are mandated to literally just sit down and plan on resiliency planning. This is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, up till today, even the parliament buildings, we do not have a resiliency plan after the Gen Z came to pay us a visit here, Mr. Speaker. That is the reason why we go back to talking about insurance. Mr. Speaker, insurance is there to take stock of what they are going to recover or not, or what they are going to repair. But where is the resiliency plan after a fire, Mr. Speaker? For those who don't understand a resiliency plan, Mr. Speaker, maybe just to break it down to basic English, the capability of bouncing back to business as usual, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even within our buildings here, as I said, after we were paid a visit by Gen Z, we still do not have a plan in terms of what is the protocol. For instance, I would like to bring in a group of 25 people, but the security has been heightened. We don't know what to do. We are just operating like, hoping for the next thing. Mr. Speaker, some of the assets that have been damaged out there, there is no plan on who is going to replace them or how. We are sort of just in limbo. Most of the times, when there is a fire emergency, Mr. Speaker, we will be quick to deal with the emergency. But immediately after the emergency, Mr. Speaker, we then realize there's no resiliency plan. How do we go back to business? What happens between the time of the fire, the rescue, and now when we want to continue with our business? What is the transition plan? Who is involved? that is also an opportunity to employ so many of our youth, because resiliency planning in itself is a whole industry, Mr. Speaker. So every time I hear about legislators and people in leadership talking about we need to create jobs, let's take the youth to kazi mtaani, I am just asking myself, we have so many opportunities where if we are intentional, we can create jobs. And that starts from a bill like this one, where we have the fire and rescue services professionals, but also within this bill, if we look at resiliency planning as an industry, then we will have so many professionals, including change management professionals, after we have a crisis, whether it is a fire crisis or whichever other crisis that can be there. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time and so that the other members in the House can contribute to this bill, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I am excited I'm excited about being in the House and participating in this particular piece of legislation, obviously because of my background also in critical facilities, but also because finally we are thinking outside the box in terms of how we are going to create jobs for the youth of this country, and also in terms of how we are going to standardize and professionalize certain industries which we have taken for granted for a very long time, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I want to support this bill, and going forward, I want to ask Senator Abbas perhaps to find time and sit with professionals as well in the facilities management industry, because there's a whole association on facilities management, and also, as we have said, the Association of the Fire and Rescue Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Orwoba. I will also call upon Senator Ogola Beatrice to contribute to this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this very critical bill by our senior brother, Senator Abbas. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to begin by congratulating His Excellency, the President, for the nominations that were just done for the cabinet positions. And I can tell you in my home county, that is Homa Bay Town, I'm being told that people are excited that at least the President is beginning to show the face of this country. And going forward, I think in other nominations, he will keep on that spirit of ensuring that the face of Kenya is reflected in his government. And I also want to encourage all of us that there can only be maybe 22 nominees. Not everybody can be nominated. And I want to encourage our young senator, Senator Gloria Orwoba, that there's always another time. And I think I also want to say that in going forward, we would also want to see in the nominees that are getting to the cabinet, we want to see the face of the youth also, that a number of our young people, both women and men, get a chance, because there will be something they would be bringing to the cabinet, which is the highest decision-making organ of the country. Now, Honorable Speaker, coming back to the Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill, this is a bill that is very crucial to us, Honorable Speaker. In my own town center, which is called a sub-county headquarters, which is called Ndewa. Honorable Speaker, we have had so many fire outbreaks. And that is an upgrowing town with small businesses, Honorable Speaker. I remember the last time just an upcoming businessman called Hope lost the whole of his shop, Honorable Speaker, and all his savings when a fire broke out. I remember one upcoming young woman called Mama Lucy in Ndewa town lost all of her shop. And incidentally, Honorable Speaker, I don't know whether this is a coincidence, that on the day that these shopkeepers stock their shops, that is the day most of these shops have fire outbreaks. Some of it could be out of electric faults, but I know from the ongoings in my town center, some of it could even be malice, Honorable Speaker. But the bottom line, Honorable Speaker, is that a number of businesses have been lost in my town, and I know in a number of towns also. Mama Lucy lost her shop, and it is so unfortunate, Honorable Speaker, that she had invested all her earnings in that shop, and Honorable Speaker, soon after that great loss, we lost Mama Lucy. And so, Honorable Speaker, these fire outbreaks are a great loss to our community. Other than Mama Lucy in Diwa Town, I hope Japala shop called Japala has lost a lot of savings. We have had a great lady who has done business over the years in Diwa Town called Minonyas. We have had a son called Onyas Owaga. We have had Winston. We have had Okumu. And Honorable Speaker, that just shows you the magnitude of the loss that fire causes in our urban centers. And fire outbreaks, Honorable Speaker, are not only limited to the urban centers. We have often seen fire outbreaks in rural homes, some of them out of some domestic use, like the lanterns that people use, but alternately, it comes to some loss, Honorable Speaker. So the fire loss affects people. We have had loss of life. We have had loss of property. We have had loss of livelihood, Honorable Speaker. And so when Senator Bass brings this bill, it is so timely, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want also to talk about the issue of physical planning of our areas. Honorable Speaker, because these fire outbreaks are major in urban centers, in the Urban Areas and Cities Act, Honorable Speaker, in uplifting a town to a municipality level, in placing the urban centers which are either market, a town, a municipality, or a city like Nairobi, one of the major requirements that are needed is the presence of a fire station. It is important at this juncture, Honorable Speaker, that I must say, in the last few years, a number of our towns have gotten municipalities through the World Bank initiated projects with the Directorate of Urban Directorate. They have gotten municipalities, but some of those municipalities do not even have an established fire station. And Honorable Speaker, you know that is very dangerous because of the populations in our towns, the populations in the urban centers, and the fact that the activities that they are involved in. Honorable Speaker, a number of times there's fire outbreak in those towns, and you find that there's always a very pathetic situation because members of the public have to put out the fire manually with water, sometimes just fetching water to put off the fire. And you know, Honorable Speaker, if a fire station is very far away from the town or from the municipality, by the time the authorities are able to assemble these fire engines, by the time they come, Honorable Speaker, you find lots of property has been lost and sometimes life has been lost. And so this bill is so timely. I would like to see, and I can see there's a mention of standards that must be met. But Honorable Speaker, the fact that the urban centers must be within some established plans, physical plans, will also help to reduce the effects of fire. And so, in talking about fire, we must also talk about the physical planning of our towns. The planning authorities, which are the county governments out there, must ensure that in planning our towns, aspects of access are taken care of. Because, Honorable Speaker, that also brings up a big challenge when there's fire outbreak. Sometimes, Honorable Speaker, where our people are residing in the urban centers, sometimes there are no proper access in terms of the roads to the houses, to the residential centers, because of poor planning. And so, Honorable Speaker, when a fire, there's an outbreak of a fire, even though a fire engine might be procured to come and rescue the situation, when there are no roads, Honorable Speaker, within the residential centers, then, Honorable Speaker, that is another disaster. Most of these properties burn down. People lose their lives because the fire services are not able to reach them. Honorable Speaker, I still come back to my town, Ndewa town. That is a major problem that the county government must deal, or the municipality must deal with the issue of planning, opening up of access roads within the municipality, because if that is not done, Honorable Speaker, even if there is a fire outbreak and we are able to procure a fire engine, it will be very difficult to reach our people wherever they are living because of lack of adequate access. Honorable Speaker, I pray that the mover of the bill considers counseling services as an aspect to include in this bill. Honorable Speaker, we have often seen where fire breaks out and there's massive loss of property, and there's massive loss of life, and there's massive loss of livelihood. People are so affected soon after that. Of course, counseling may not be directly linked, but I pray that this is brought as a component of the kind of services that should be offered by the county governments in the provision of fire services. I say this, Honorable Speaker, because back to my own town, this one great lady that we lost, Mama Lucy, and amongst others, a number have broken down, a number have even sold those plots after their properties are burnt down because they were not insured. They have probably lost all their earnings. They have children going to school. They have families to take care of. And so, Honorable Speaker, when they lose all this property, it is always very too demanding on them, and a number of them go down psychologically. And that is why I say that the mover needs to find a way in which we can also bring in the issue of counseling services. And Honorable Speaker, with the issue of fire and rescue services, we must also think about the issue of compensation. Honorable Speaker, a number of these people having lost their property, and some of them, Honorable Speaker, are businesses where loans were taken either from banks or through other means, Honorable Speaker, and once their businesses are destroyed, Mr. Speaker, sir, it becomes so demanding on these families. They can either, as county governments, they can either incorporate in other sectors the issue of educating the members on ensuring their businesses, but practically, Honorable Speaker, the issue of compensation of loss of property should also be considered. I say this because, Honorable Speaker, sometimes these properties burn out of electric faults, if for that matter, and some of these businesses can be compensated by KPLC, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I must also mention the issue of the boards. One of the previous speakers had talked about leaving the Council of Governors probably out of the boards. But I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is important that the Council of Governors are represented because, Honorable Speaker, fire services are devolved functions in Schedule 4. So it would be prudent that the Council of Governors are involved, and basically, Honorable Speaker, because it is the county governments that deal on a day-to-day business over some of these fire incidences. But, Honorable Speaker, in an ideal situation, and from the practicalities that we see on an everyday basis, I would have loved a situation, Honorable Speaker, where the Red Cross, other than taking one slot, I'm impressed by the mover of the bill that you have singled out Red Cross to be in the board. In an ideal situation, when we see fire outbreaks or disasters, Honorable Speaker, there are entities that are always very active on the disaster scene. One of them is Red Cross. I would have loved a situation where we would have even 2 representatives of Red Cross in that board. The second team I would really want to see is the Kenya Medical Services. I'm happy that Senator Bass has mentioned 1 slot for the Kenya Medical Services, but I would love to see Kenya Medical Services even having 2 slots. Honorable Speaker, I say this because in all disasters, the people we see on the scenes of these disasters are Red Cross, are the medical fraternity, and Honorable Speaker, if there was even a chance, I would have loved to see even members of the press are included as members of the board. Honorable Speaker, I say this because let us flash back on even the recent occurrences we have had in this country. Occurrences that have been painful because of the loss of lives. That is the demonstrations that we have seen in the recent past. There are outstanding professionals that came out to stand with the demonstrators. And if they were not there, Honorable Speaker, we would probably have lost so many lives. We saw the medics very active. We saw, Honorable Speaker, we saw the Red Cross very active. Honorable Speaker, we saw the press, the media very active. And we saw lawyers that were very active. We would like Kenyans to view the occurrences we have had. Even though there were great losses, Honorable Speaker, we must also begin to think at the good side of these occurrences, that people were able to come out to exhibit humanity, Honorable Speaker. So it is on that note that I suggest, Honorable Speaker, that the mover should think of increasing the membership of the Red Cross from 1 to 2, the Kenya Medical Services from 1 to 2, and probably have members of the press, the media. Honorable Speaker, the media are very critical that the media are able to pass information across the country. And Honorable Speaker, when there's a fire outbreak, all you need is that the right people get the information at the right time and at the right speed. Because once that can happen, Honorable Speaker, then it means rescue can be mobilized in a very short time. Honorable Speaker, I also want to suggest that we should also begin to think about the curriculum in this country. That just as that because of humanity, because of our habitation, and because of the nature of our stays, and especially because of the rise of urbanization, issues like fire and fire rescue will be part and parcel of our livelihoods. And so, we must also in the long run think about our curriculum, that each one of us, even each of our children, our young people as they go to school, as we teach them, we must have in the curriculum aspects of disaster like fire, because these are the disasters that can break up anytime, Honorable Speaker. That I must also bring forward. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, as I support this outstanding bill that talks about our livelihood, that talks about humanity, I'm here grappling with the idea, Honorable Speaker, that I see in our urban centers, services like water are privatized, Honorable Speaker, and probably that makes it even more accessible to people. Should we not also think about fire and rescue services to be privatized so that we have partners that can also offer some of those services? I say this, Honorable Speaker, because my main objective is the fact that when that finally happens, is there somebody that is available, even at some cost, to provide?
Give Senator Beatrice 1 minute to conclude.
Okay, thank you. As I wind up my support to this great bill, all I was saying, Honorable Speaker, is that when fire breaks out, how often or how fast are we able to access services? We would like the county governments to up their game. We would like the devolution committee, which is also chaired by Senator Bass, that in granting municipalities to town, let us be firm that certain services are available as prescribed in the Urban Areas and Cities Act. Honorable Speaker, I support.
There being no other senator requesting to speak to this bill, I'll call upon the mover, Senator Bass, to reply.
Honorable Speaker, thank you so much for the time. I will make a request, Honorable Speaker. Based on to Standing Order 663, I request that the putting of the question to be deferred.
Senator Abbas, could you just reply first before you make
the
application for deferment of putting of the question?
I want me to reply? Okay, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank all the, I think this is a very important bill, and it's developing a lot of interest for the members, and I'm sure many members will have liked to contribute. However, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the members who contributed. I think about 10 of them, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, I would beg to reply the bill and make a request also. But the request, since this bill is actually generating a lot of interest among the members, pursuant to Standing Order 663, I request the question to be deferred to a later date to allow more members to contribute to the bill. Thank you so much.
Senator Abbas, pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, the putting of the question to this bill is deferred to the next sitting of this House. Now, honorable members, earlier on, the order paper had been rearranged to have the bill that we've just concluded its debate on And I will further rearrange the order paper by first deferring order number 8 to 23 and order number 25 and 26 to the next sitting. Yes, order number 8 to 23 and order 25 and 26. And I'll call upon the clerk to call order number 24.
Order number 24, the Local Content Bill, Senate Bills number 50 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Omatinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to move that the Local Content Bill number 50 of the Senate be read for a second time. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Local Content Bill, the Senate Bill number 50 of 2023, was published by the Kenya Gazette, supplement number 224, on the 25th November 2023, and was introduced in the Senate in the way of the first reading. Further on, Mr. Speaker, the bill stood committed to the Committee of Energy, which I share. And the pursuant to provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution and Standing Order 145, the Senate Standing Committee orders, the Standing Committee on Energy did a public participation as required. On Thursday, the 10th of August 2023, the committee published an advertisement on the National Diary, and responses were received from various stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Local Content Bill, the Senate Bill number 50 of 2023, seeks to provide a framework to facilitate the local ownership, control, and financing of activities connected with exploration of gas, oil, and petroleum resources, to provide a framework to increase the local value along the chain. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill aims to enhance Kenya's economy by increasing the local content in the extractive industry through systematic development and the national capacity capabilities and investment in local workforce by enabling technology transfer, services, and supplies to maximize the benefits shared by the local community. The bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, therefore intends to maximize the level of usage of local goods and services, people, businesses, and enable a framework within which the local people can take an beneficial part. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill focuses on the oil, gas, and other petroleum resources sectors in Kenya. To this effect, Mr. Speaker, sir, the law shall apply to all commercial activities related to exploration, extraction, and development of oil, gas, and other petroleum resources in the extractive industry in Kenya. It seeks, Mr. Speaker, sir, to promote maximization of value addition and the creation of employment opportunities within the extractive industries along the value chain through the use of local expertise, goods, services, businesses, financing, and the retention in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, having conducted public participation in the bill, the committee has come up with a few recommendations that will be proposed at a later stage as amendments to be introduced. The committee, Mr. Speaker, sir, observed that the initial definition, observed that the current wording of Clause 7, particularly subclause B2, 4, and 5, were problematic. These subparagraphs were encroaching on the implementation functions vested in the county governments, effectively taking away the county implementation responsibility. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee observed that the bill lacked a clear funding model for activities in the Local Content Development Committee, given that the functions of the committee and were capital intensive, and the absence of specific funding mechanisms and models could hinder the effective execution of its duties. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee further observed that the original requirements of the Local Content and Development Committee to develop comprehensive register for all services and equipments needed for the extractive industries were to be conducted within 6 months. These, Mr. Speaker, is unrealistic given the complexity of the tax involved. A 6-month timeline was deemed to be insufficient. Further on, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee observed that the composition of the Local Content Development Committee did not include the Principal Secretary responsible for mining. Given that extractive industry comprises both oil and gas sector as well as mining sector, the absence of Principal Secretary for mining could lead to inadequate representation and consideration of mining-related issues within the committee. As a result, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee observed that the original proposal to establish a technical and administrative unit from the ministry responsible for petroleum as the sole secretariat for the committee raised concerns about how inclusive it could be, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it was the observation of the committee that some consequential amendments need to be undertaken in the Mining Act so that the bill will become responsive and also address the issues that needed to be raised. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that Kenya has struck oil mines in some regions in the Rift Valley. Mr. Speaker, we know that we are still stuck in the field development plans. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this being a new field, it has and it lacks good frameworks, the expertise, and most importantly, it is foreign country driven, and therefore, the local communities may be disadvantaged if we lack a clear framework within which this can be anchored. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that we as a country come up with a standardized approach that will guide moving forward any such exploration. We know that we still have a lot of potential in this country, Mr. Speaker, where we have several blocks that have not been explored. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that we come with a framework within which the county governments can be able to ensure that the local communities have benefited from the exploration that is being done by foreign companies. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee in its consideration of the bill was also important. Some of these exploration and exploitation, they leave a dilapidated environment, and we know that environmental degradation, Mr. Speaker, sir, in some of these activities can be quite detrimental to the local communities. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is important to ensure that as the communities suffer the losses in terms of ecological and environmental losses, adequate measures are put in place to ensure that they are not only adequately compensated, but also to ensure that because of the advanced technology required to extract some of these resources, the local community do benefit in a way of technology transfer so that when they are there in future, they can be able to be self-sustaining. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that oil mining, petroleum mining has become a curse to many African countries. For us as a country to be able to avoid this curse that has befallen some of the big major oil producers, be it Nigeria, be it Ghana and the like, we must come up with measures, we must come up with a framework that ensures that the local community do not only become passive partakers, but they are actively involved by ensuring that there is not only technology transfer, but also direct and proportionate benefit in terms of the benefits accruing from such a prospecting or mining. Mr. Speaker, sir, in absence of a clearly defined framework, some of the county governments, like for example now the case of Turkana, we know it is one of the marginalized county that may lack the capacity in terms of technical capacity and capital to be able to undertake its own training mechanism in the curriculum. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the observation of the committee that during the composition of the committee that will be ensuring that there is equitable distribution and sharing of resources between the national government and the county government and the local community, that we put in place an elaborate mechanism that spells out how such a resources will be shared, and the guidelines put in such a manner that they are easy to understand, easy to implement, and most importantly, when such resources are being exploited, that the operationalization will not become too problematic and chaotic as has become in many oil mining countries in Africa. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee therefore recommended that it is important, as the committee to oversee this is being composed, that we ensure that we do not only have the representation of the county government, but equally also the local communities, so that they can get the benefits of the mines that are being exploited from their own counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, in line with the bill that's proposed and before us, it is imperative that we note that most local communities have been left out and they've not benefited to a great detail because the rules and the regulations are not well spelled out, and the accounting methods that have been applied by these multinationals have ended up giving skewed results where the local communities have not benefited at all. Mr. Speaker, sir, I may want to refresh, to bring to the attention of this House, that during the mining of oil, the exploration of oil in Turkana, there was the oil trucking that was shipped or trucked to Mombasa, several barrels of oil, and up to date, Mr. Speaker, nobody knows what happened to the oil, nobody knows what happened to the proceeds of oil, and most unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, the local community only saw the extraction and the transportation, but they've never gotten any feedback of what happened to the oil, Mr. Speaker. On inquiring that was done by this committee, Mr. Speaker, about the whereabouts of the oil that was shipped to Mombasa or transported to Mombasa, we could not come up with a conclusive answer because nobody seemed to know why or what happened to that consignment. Mr. Speaker, sir, to avoid such a reoccurrence, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we put mechanisms in place to ensure that whatever has been extracted from a particular area, the local community stands to benefit. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we talk about benefiting, there are multifaceted benefits, Mr. Speaker. One, and the most important, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that the local communities do not only partake, but they also get the training so that there is some actual technology transfer in such a manner that the communities around will become involved in the extractive industry and they can create their livelihood along that. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also important to ensure that the local communities who are the owners of the lands do not only get the compensation they require, but they get consummate compensation that will ensure that their livelihood moving on to the future is assured. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, cannot happen unless we put an elaborate mechanism in place that is easy to interpret, easy to adopt, and easy to implement. Mr. Speaker, sir, further on, we also noted that most of the communities in oil and exploration countries, most of the local communities live in abject poverty. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, is attributable to two factors. One, they are deprived of their means of livelihood, and we know most African communities live on subsistence farming. Once oil exploration or gas exploration starts taking place, we know that the land is rendered unproductive and the level of pollution is very high. The suffering of the local community, Mr. Speaker, sir, is twofold. One, environmental pollution, which ends up degrading the value of the land, and two, because of the environmental pollution, we know that they suffer from a lot of health hazards, which leads to a lot of diseases, and mostly respiratory-related diseases. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, can be addressed, as is envisaged in the bill, if we have adequate compensation that will ensure that where such a mining takes place, exploration and extraction takes place, there is adequate measures put in place to ensure that the local community will get adequate supply of medical facilities so that where they suffer from such diseases, that can be addressed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill is expected to facilitate the development of local economies through the creation of employment opportunities and by ensuring the procurement of goods and services that are produced locally do get market within these multinationals that do the exploration and exploitation of the local resources. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also envisaged through this bill, Mr. Speaker, that through the regulation and through the formation of this committee, that the participation of the local communities will be enhanced, they'll be informed, but most importantly, through curricular development, that the local communities can be empowered. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill provides a framework through which the benefits relating to exploration of natural resources will cascade to the local communities and in which the resources are found. As a result, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is expected that the county government's economies will directly be impacted by the exploration of these resources as opposed to what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, sir, when the exploration takes place and the local communities are left with a dilapidated or degraded environment which they cannot be able to reclaim because they lack the technology, they lack the capital, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, because some of the exploration are hazardous and therefore detrimental to the health of the local community. Mr. Speaker, sir, the county government would therefore be expected to be at the forefront, ensuring that the local content is realized under this act. The bill is therefore a bill concerning county government in terms of Article 110(1) of the Constitution, 1A of the Constitution. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, is also not a money bill within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would urge my fellow senators to support this bill, also maybe to suggest the amendments that they may deem to be necessary so that we make it a bill that is comprehensive and, most importantly, to ensure that the interests of the local communities have been taken care of, and most importantly, that the local communities are well informed about their rights, about their obligations. And we know, Mr. Speaker, sir, most of the times that when multinationals come in the country, the local communities are left to be beggars. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is quite unfortunate. If you go today in Lokisha, you'll see the local communities lined up with jerry cans of water, waiting for the water trucks which undertake the water kiting to come and provide them with water. It could have been, Mr. Speaker, sir, if that was rightly conceptualized, that a water pipeline could have been installed, because, in the oil extraction, the extracting companies uses pumps water into a boreholes so that they can displace the oil. As they pump in water, the oil is pumped out. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, it could have been at a very small additional cost to provide additional water kiosks so that the local communities could have at least have benefited from the extraction of oil. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I request my colleague Senator Abbas to second, I would request that we come up with systems, we come up with frameworks, we come up with methodologies, especially that will encourage the younger generations to take part in the exploration, in the value addition, and most importantly, to look at the business opportunities that will arise from the same so that we can create employment, especially for the Gen Zs. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know the potential of this country, especially in gas. We know that we're only using 16%. That leaves about 84% of the potential that we have in terms of downstream and end-to-end or downstream last-mile connectivity. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the 86%, we have a very big potential to ensure that our young people go into this business, especially the modern digital gas trading, whereby you can be able to sell gas as being consumed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know also the potential in this oil and gas industry is quite untapped. This can only happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, if we have a mechanism, and this bill will be able to assist in that, whereby the lack of capacity within the local communities to participate in this extractive industry and its connected activities is encouraged, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, incentives created in terms of tangible returns in form of what would be the yield of the investment. Mr. Speaker, sir, having spoken about the lack of technology, it is also imperative as we look at this, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we become quite intentional in creating training facilities that will ensure that the young generation and the Kenyans at large within those local communities are empowered in a way that they'll get the technology and they'll get also the know-how, and most importantly, that we can also be in a position to subsidize the kind of machineries that they would be able to use so that they can be able to take part exhaustively in this kind of exploration, extractive exploration and value addition. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, it has been lack of framework that has hindered the participation of the local community. It has also been, Mr. Speaker, sir, the advantage the multinationals have, the economies of scale, access to capital that has rendered many Kenyans unable to access this extractive industry. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill is quite intentional of creating an environment that will ensure that even the local communities, as uneducated as they are, that they'll be able to take an active part in the extractive industry so that their benefit, Mr. Speaker, sir, will not only be on the wages they earn, but they'll also be taking part on the value chain of the whole process. Mr. Speaker, sir, I know this bill will go a great way into aiding these communities, and knowing that the potential of exploration in gas, in oil, and other associated utilities has not even been exploited. The potential we have as a country is quite enormous, and therefore it is important that we have a legal framework that guides all the company multinationals intending to invest in the country in such a manner that there will be a standardized approach in all the counties on how the local communities will be assisted to ensure that they take part in that. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, it is also very, very important to note that, as I have said, Mr. Speaker, there is quite a huge potential, Mr. Speaker, of the gas. And as we seek to move into greener energy, it is important to note that most of the households in Kenya use firewood and charcoal and maybe even other fossil fuel-based cooking means. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, has rendered to many households not only having unsafe and unhygienic cooking methods, but also has been a major cause of respiratory diseases. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, as has been put forward by the Kenya Kwanza government, envisaging every household to be using green energy to cook, natural gas becomes one of the answers. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a very great potential for the young people in this country. There is a very great potential for the Gen Zs in this country to take part in the last mile connectivity of the gas to be used, especially in the local communities. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the current technology, it is appropriate that now we start coming up with models where we'll be doing gas piping, and especially on the affordable housing, so that you do not have the danger of cylinders that are substandard, that have been exploding from time to time. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also need to look at the possibility. Instead of having the trucks transporting the gas, we can also look at the possibilities, and especially in the urban centers, in schools and other infrastructures, to have piped gas so that we can be able to manage the risks associated with it. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very progressive bill, and I think it will go a long way into ensuring that the Kenyans do not only utilize the environmental and natural resources to their benefit, but in a way that they'll also be able to partake and benefit from the same. In addition, Mr. Speaker, sir, we know Article 66 sub-Article 2 of the Constitution further provides that the Parliament shall enact legislation ensuring that investments in property benefit local communities and their economies. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, seeks to address that very same problem, Mr. Speaker. Moving forward, Mr. Speaker, we know that there is a correlation between the remoteness of the area and the natural resources found. Mr. Speaker, sir, gas and oil are found either in the deep oceans, in the marginalized areas. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we seek to give equitable distribution of our revenue, it is also important that we ensure that those communities, especially those who shall disadvantaged, get to benefit from the natural resources that they've been endowed with. This cannot happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, unless we put a sound and a robust legal framework to ensure that there is no exploitation of the marginalized communities by the multinationals who come with the capital and with the know-how. With this, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll beg my colleague, Senator Abbas, to second.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as a member of the Committee of Energy, I wish to second the motion. Honourable Speaker, the bill seeks to provide a framework for development and adoption of local contents. In the past, we used to see multinationals going all over parts of Kenya, doing explorations, but the local people are not so much involved, and because they are not even knowledgeable. It was also a pressure for a few senior members of the political leaders that they only knew the whole thing which was going on, but the rest of Kenya didn't know. And as a result, there were instances even that there's alleged that some of these explorations actually have been also bearing some nuclear waste and hazard wastes, which actually is already significant in parts of my county. And therefore, I think the bill now gives a lot of responsibility to the local contents, like the country, the experts in the country, the local communities within that area, and that now there will be a thorough environmental impact assessment, so that at least these people we can know what kind of things they're carrying. They have big containers that nobody knows what they're carrying, and they're so secretive and so exclusive. I mean, everything they do exclusively, that even the local workers, the people who work for them, cannot even access some of their camps. And I think that should not be happening anymore. The bill will give powers to Kenyans, and at least one other thing is that in the local content bill, will at least give the communities to receive 30% of the whatever income that will be generated from the resources, and of which it will be divided between the community and the county governments. And therefore, the only problem we have now is actually the capacity. And the Kenyans have not had much knowledge on the hydrocarbon and oil development. I think it is high time that our universities will change, and that we need to develop the young men and women who are going to studying now in issues to do with the environment and engineering and all these things, to have a full capacity on mineral and oil hydrocarbon development studies, so at least we can be able to have Kenya capacities that we know we now will have experts who will be able to give us and safeguard our interests during the multinationals when they come in. They used to do everything exclusively, and they did a lot of, undercover. Most of the things have been done undercover. So I think the people that now will be able to empower the technical team from Kenya, that at least they will be able to know whatever is taking place in the country. One other thing is actually, Honourable Speaker, in most instances where oil exploration has taken place, the environment is actually so much affected. At times, even there was the soil completely changes, the trees disappear, and I don't know what really happens to that in these places. We need to go. If you go to areas like Marsabit, you go to Wajir and all these places where they have done some oil explorations, there's total destruction of the environment, and there's actually associated with a lot of incurable diseases like the cancer and all these things. And I think it's high time that the Kenyans, the government, should be serious on all explorations, and anybody who wants to do gas exploration. I think we need to have a pre-inspection taking place before these multinationals are allowed to do explorations. And then we must ensure that the agreement being done, most of these locals don't even understand what is going on. So the local content percentage should be enforced, and the members of the community should benefit from those things. Because what has happened now in Turkana, in most parts, the oil was there. It was being taken to the vehicles, and we even don't know how much money has been given to the locals. Last time when the committee visited there, the locals said that they have not even received any penny. It may be the counties were getting little money, but it was not trickled down to the communities. Like you see, as the chairman said, that communities actually look very desperate. They can't even get water from the camps where the explorers are. So I think what we call the SR, the CSR, the corporate social responsibilities, should be enhanced and seen that before exploration takes place, the community first must get their benefits first. And therefore, with those few remarks, I beg to support the bill. To second the bill. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Local Content Bill, Senate Bills number 50 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable members, the bill is now available for debate, and I will call upon Senator Beatrice Ogola to make her contribution.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for granting me the opportunity to contribute to the Local Content Bill 2023. Honorable Speaker, I must appreciate Senator Wamatinga for this bill. Honorable Speaker, it is a bill that speaks to my heart. Honorable Speaker, in my earlier life, I happen to have served as CCM, that is County Executive Committee member in the county government of Homa Bay from 2013 to just before I joined this honorable house. And Honorable Speaker, one of the achievements I can attribute to my time as the CEC in charge of energy and natural resources is that I, along with other partners and along with the whole direct sector of energy in the county government of Homa Bay, and working hand in hand with a number of sector partners in the county and out of the county, and with the blessing of the governor then, the cabinet then of the county, we developed a Clean Energy Act in Homa Bay County. Honorable Speaker, in my county, there's still great use of unclean energy. And that is what drove my team to develop this act. And I'm happy that amongst the aspect of consideration is that we would be driving the people of Homa Bay to use of clean energy. And I find it very relevant here that this is an act of parliament that is specific to the exploitation of gas, oil, and other petroleum resources to provide for a framework to increase the local value capture along the value chain in the exploration of gas, oil, and other petroleum resources and for connected purposes. Honorable Speaker, when we look at the key word there, the local content, it is about adding value. And this value, Honorable Speaker, I'm impressed that this is a value that is going to add, that is going to enhance the economy of this country, specifically from the extractive industry, through a systematic development of the national capacity and capabilities of our people. Honorable Speaker, as I support this bill impresses me because when you go to the objects of this act, Honorable Speaker, it talks about employment. And Honorable Speaker, employment is an issue in this country. You can reflect, Honorable Speaker, we can reflect to the recent happenings. In my contribution to the motion on the state of the nation, I indicated, Honorable Speaker, that in my generation, when we were winding up college, Honorable Speaker, I'm a trained teacher. As I was winding up college, we were graduating but with posting letters to our stations, Honorable Speaker. And that is the big difference that this generation has, that a number of our graduates today across all the professions, as they wind up university education and their colleges, they come back to their homes with their degrees, and they have to spend over 5, 6, some of them even over 10 years looking for employment. And probably, Honorable Speaker, not even probably, that has been a major issue, even with the Gen Z demonstrations that we have had. And that is why we feel for the Gen Zs, that they have gone through school, but a number of them, if not most of them, are not finding employment elsewhere. When you look at the Gen Zs, Honorable Speaker, as they address the nation, some of them are outstanding brains. And Honorable Speaker, with the energy, with their youth and the energy and the agility, Honorable Speaker, and with no jobs, Honorable Speaker, they are left with very little to do other than to call out the government and all of us in leadership, because they are seeking the attention of this country. Employment is a big issue in this country, and that is why I'm supporting this bill, Honorable Speaker, that the bill is how to create employment opportunities in the extractive industry. Value addition, and through what impresses me, Honorable Speaker, is that in creating this employment and in the value addition circle that is prescribed in this bill, it talks about, thank you.
Honorable Senators, it's now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 25th July 2024 at 2:30 p.m. Senator Beatrice, you will have a balance of 13 minutes to continue with your contribution when we resume tomorrow.